call the Hopkinton Town Council meeting of October 1st, 2018 to order with a moment of silent meditation and salute to the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, first up, folks, we have an introduction for the IT GIS Director, Chris Shedd. Bill McGarry, you want to introduce Chris, our new IT Director?
Sure, thank you very much. I have the pleasure of introducing our new IT Director, Chris Shedd. Chris is a resident of the town of North Kingstown, and he's been on board since mid-July of this year. He's doing a terrific job for us. He's got a lot of past experience. He graduated from North Kingston High School, and also from New England Tech with a associate's degree in computer information systems, and also from the University of Rhode Island with a bachelor's degree. He's got a lot of prior experience. He was a former network specialist, a computer technician, an assistant security engineer before coming here to Hopkinton. And the good news is he's still here. Would you like to say a few words, Chris?
Yeah, it's been 2 months. Everybody here is wonderful. I'm excited to bring what I can to make everything work a little bit more smooth.
How's a small office doing?
I like it. It's nice and peaceful.
Can't fit anybody else in there?
Yeah. So I thank you very much.
Yeah, welcome.
Welcome to Hopkinton.
Yeah, board, Chris.
Thanks. Next, a presentation of a letter of recognition from the Hopkinton Police Department to Sergeant Ryan Percival, the department's accreditation manager, for attaining full compliance with Rhode Island Police Accreditation Commission's 204 statewide accreditation standards. And then I think right after that will be the presentation of a citation from the Rhode Island Police Association Police Accreditation Commission, I'm sorry. Executive Director Christine Crocker and Richmond Police Chief Elwood Johnson to the Hopkinton Police Department for obtaining full compliance with RIPAC's accreditation standards. Chief Palmer.
Thank you, Mr. President. There's two things on the agenda, but I'm going to get all my thanks out of the way in one. First, I'd like to thank Town Manager Bill McGarry being supportive in getting the accreditation. It would stand to reason that he would. He brought accreditation to the state police many, many years ago. Sorry. Obviously, he'd want us to get accredited as well. And there's a long process for us. There's really three things that really have to come to fruition for us to get this. The first was to get some funding to change some of the things that the police department to comply with some of the standards they had. We were lucky enough to get some funding with the Google, and we were able to change things such as our evidence locker, our armory, our self-lock. These are all examples of some of the things we need to change. The second thing we really needed to implement is putting a great accreditation manager in there. And I know I did that with Sergeant Percival. Sergeant Percival has some great skill sets. He has good writing skills, IT skills, computer skills, and probably most importantly, organizational skills. I took those into consideration when I assigned him, much to the chagrin of Sergeant Percival. It makes it a little bit difficult because when you're at a small department, and all small departments have that same problem, is you can't assign an accreditation manager full-time. You just can't. You just don't have that manpower. And he was second shift, so he's handling supervisory issues. He's handling calls, and at the same time trying to get 204 standards completed. The third thing that you need to have is in coordination with the RIPAC, which is Rhode Island Police Accreditation Commission, and you need to have the organization with them in corroboration. And luckily we dealt with Director Christine Crocker, knew her before she was there. She was a Cumberland police captain, retiring after 25 years. She obviously was a perfect fit for taking over at RIPAC. Can't say enough about her effort here. She came down 3 separate times. She's on the phone with me several times, and probably quite a few more times with Sergeant Percival. So they were great, the assessors were great, and we needed that corroboration to get this done. And I think she'll expound about that in a few minutes. But I want to thank her and her assessors and the whole group. It really has been a great experience, difficult, and the lion's share on our part really was bared by Sergeant Percival. And so with that, I want to give him this letter of recognition, and I'll read that to you. Sergeant Ryan Percival for his exceptional work as the Hopkinton Police Accreditation Manager in conjunction with the Rhode Island Police Accreditation Commission, known as RIPAC. Sergeant Percival spearheaded the review, development, and compliance of 204 applicable RIPAC accreditation standards. These standards are designed to improve and evaluate overall performance, guide policies for the future, and ensure standard of compliance. Over the past 3 years, Sergeant Percival's policies guide policies for the future and ensure standard compliance over the past 3 years. His regular duty on second shift as a supervisor, while also coordinating with members of the Hopkinton Police Department and RIPAC to meet these standards. On August 8, 2018, Sergeant Percival and other members of the Hopkinton Police met with RIPAC Executive Director Christine Crocker for a mock accreditation, which was confirmed shortly thereafter. Sergeant Percival is recognized for his police and computer knowledge, diligence, and tenacity in completing this arduous task. His performance is long associated with the professionalism of the Hopkinton Police Department. Sergeant Percival.
Ryan? It's been a pleasure. Thank you.
Thanks, Ryan.
Thank you.
Nice job. And I'd be remiss if I did not mention Chief Johnson. He's here to help present the plaque. Chief Johnson, I think you all know, is the Richmond Police Chief. He's my classmate from the state police. I recognize he was the baby, I was the old man. But he's been great as a chief in a neighboring department. We've been able to bounce things off of each other, and I'd like to think we complement each other pretty well. He's a good friend of mine, and so he's here to help present that. So, without further ado, I will move on to the next.
Okay. Presentation.
But you can't wait for more formal reading comply.
Good evening. It's a pleasure to finally be here to award the Hopkinton Police Department with accreditation. For those of you who may be wondering what is accreditation, I'd like to help break it down pretty simplistically. Would you send your child to a college or university that's not accredited? I don't think so. Would you have surgery in a hospital that's not accredited? Why wouldn't we want the gatekeepers of our community to also be accredited? Accreditation is achieving excellence by adhering to nationally recognized best practices for law enforcement. And it's no easy task. A lot of these things are things that law enforcement has been doing. We just weren't always really good at memorializing it and ensuring that our policies gave the guidance necessary to our personnel. So the sergeant did have a lot of blood, sweat, and tears to get this done, but he was a trooper through it. All in all, whatever suggestions were made, any questions he had, no pushback. They saw the value in this. So as residents and town fathers, you should be very proud of your police agency. Chief, you got the award. The work starts tomorrow, because in 3 years, we'll be back to see if you did what you said you were going to do. So, without further ado, I'll turn it over to Commissioner Chief Elwood Johnson.
And unfortunately, the font is in italics, so it's very hard to read. My arm's very long, but I just want to congratulate Chief Palmer, Captain Carey, members of the department in the back, particularly Sergeant Percival. This is the least glamorous thing you can do in law enforcement. And the only blood he probably had were paper cuts, but there were many of those. It is documentation, it's very wordy, it's very time consuming, but it's important, it mitigates liability. And it gives us guidance on how to do things the best way. So without further ado, Rhode Island Police Accreditation Commission, be it hereby known that the Hopkinton Police Department has voluntarily complied with the required standards as set forth by the Commission and is hereby awarded this certificate of accreditation. Effective this first day of October 2018, and hereby shall be recognized as an accredited agency for a term of 3 years. Congratulations.
And in recognition of your blood, sweat, and tears and your commitment to professional excellence, to mark your initial award of accreditation, we have a nice little paperweight for you that notes this date. In recognition of professional excellence, Chief David S. Palmer, on your initial award of accreditation, October 1, 2018. Thank you. You're welcome. And certainly well-deserved. Sergeant, you also have a paperweight that you can throw when you get angry with me for changing standards or adding new ones.
No, I passed the on.
Oh, okay. But in recognition of your hard work and dedication to getting this done, in recognition of professional excellence, to Sergeant Ryan Percival, on your initial award of accreditation, October 1st, 2018.
Thank you.
You're welcome. And last but not least, accreditation doesn't work without the support of your town manager, your city and town councils, your community leaders. And I know how important this was to town manager McGarry, because when we started accreditation, I won't say how many years ago, his former agency, Smithfield, was instrumental in helping us achieve accreditation in Cumberland. So, of course, I wanted to make sure that you were recognized. In recognition of professional excellence, Town Manager William McGarry, on your initial award of accreditation, October 1st, 2018. Thank you very much. I took that. I thought you were going to give me some readers.
Okay, thanks all for that. Next, I want to move up the town business to the front of the agenda for the hearing. So,
I'd like to make a motion to move the order of business from the consent agenda through new business to be heard before the hearing.
Second.
okay, motion made and second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Okay, consent agenda. Approved town council meeting minutes of September 17th, 2018, set November 5th, 2018. It's 5th, right, Barbara?
It is.
Okay. As the hearing date for renewals of liquor licenses and victualling licenses. Approve abatements resulting from adjustments on motor vehicles, tangibles, and real property submitted by the tax assessor. Approve refunds as a result of overpayment of 2018 real property tax and motor vehicle tax and motor vehicle phase-out program.
I'd like to pull tax assessor.
Okay.
I'll make a motion to approve the consent agenda except the tax assessor.
I'll second that.
Okay, motion made second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay.
On, it's the tax assessor's town property tax assessor page. Crothers, John P. and Johnson Bryant. The number is 1,284,000. The comma's in the wrong place.
Get rid of the zero.
Well, I think it's getting rid of the zero or moving a comma, I'm not sure which. Right here.
Yeah, so that needs correction.
Well, it's just a period instead of a comma.
Why don't we
Maybe.
postpone this to the next meeting?
With those.
Because we're really not sure what the number is.
2,840.48. It's too much money, or it's not enough money. I don't know which it is. But if we could just postpone that and figure out what the real number is.
Okay.
All right.
All right. All right. First public forum, anybody wishing to speak? We're going to get to, hopefully through once the witnesses are heard, I think, Joe, you've got about 3 or 4 perhaps, then we'll have an opportunity for residents to speak on this particular hearing. Anyone wishing to be heard prior to that, I guess, on something else? Okay. Next under my report, myself and Bill McGarry attended the 927 Rhode Island Leagues of Cities and Towns annual meeting at the crossings in Warwick. I guess it was a good event. We had a good time, good meal, and good to see all the elected officials in one room to collaborate with. So anyway, it was a good event. Next, under new business, number 1, discuss, consider, and possibly vote to establish a committee that will complete a town-wide identification of dead trees that are the town's responsibility along each street, determine the cost of their removal, and when this will be completed. Sylvia Thompson had asked this to be put on the agenda. It's something I think that all towns and cities are experiencing due to all the gypsy moth damage. Sylvia, you want to just give us a heads up on it?
Yeah, I talked to Bill McGarry, our town manager, about it, and he suggested that we set up a committee similar to what we did with the water line, and that this committee could consist of the Public Works Director and or the deputy, the tax assessor, and Bill McGarry, and I offered to be the council rep, and I don't know if there's anyone else that we may want to add, but the issue is there are isolated areas, Collins Road, Tamaqua, the Canonship. It's probably every single street has some, but there are some areas where you could, within 2 miles, count 30 or 40 trees. I mean, it's just pretty bad. So unfortunately, it isn't something we can begin to cut down trees right away, because it's a process to go through. So the committee will do its work as soon as it can and get their recommendations to the councils, and then we'll know how much this. What the thinking is that there's just so many trees, hundreds of them in total, spread out over the town, that it's not possible for Public Works to be able to do it. But Public Works can identify the trees that are near the road that are our responsibility. They can also identify anything that looks like it's National Grid's responsibility. So that's what we talked about, and that's what you have before you, to just set up a committee to deal with the trees. And there was even a suggestion from somebody, which made sense too. You squirt a little paint, just whatever color you pick on the tree, rather than use surveyor tape, which could be removed. So, but anyway, those are details for the committee.
I have a question, one more detail for the committee. So you're going to take a look, I think it's a good idea, because we certainly have had an enormous amount of gypsy moth damage. So you're going to establish which ones are National Grid, which ones are Hopkinton, could be our responsibility, and are you going to also speak to all the citizens on which trees are actually their responsibility?
Yeah,
You know, so
usually,
and they can say this particular one is dead, this one may recover.
and
So
some
they
people,
have to put all the money out that they.
yeah, in the
Maybe
past, when we've had
concerned about.
tree companies come along, which isn't that often, but when somebody went through the last time on our street, they left you a note. We're going to be cutting some limbs and ask trees, do you have, do we have your permission? And I think most people gave them permission. But anyway, they did ask, and I think something along those lines is important. And this is something that would get farmed out, go out to bid. And I also know that the tree companies, the companies themselves, are so very busy all over the state that some of them are booked out a year. So the sooner we figure out where it is and how many, and we can go out to bid, the better.
Okay. Someone like to make a motion to set up a committee, I guess?
Well, I'll make a motion to set up, and to establish a committee that will complete a townwide identification of dead trees that are the town's responsibility along each street, determine the cost of their removal, when this may be completed, so that we may have those numbers before our budget cycle in January.
Second that.
Okay, motion made and second. Any further discussion? Having heard none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye, thank you. Number 2, under new business, discuss, consider, and possibly vote to adopt a 75th wedding anniversary proclamation in honor of Louise and Eric Burton. Are they here tonight?
98.
They're 98.
98 now. Both of them are 98?
Yes.
Would you like me to read it?
Please.
This is for Mr. and Mrs. Eric A. Burton. Whereas the Hopkinton Town Council, on behalf of all the citizens and inhabitants of said town, hereby pays tribute to Mary Louise Burton and Eric A. Burton on the auspicious occasion of their 75th wedding anniversary. And whereas the Hopkinton Town Council wishes to publicly acknowledge and recognize the love and devotion they have shared as loving parents and grandparents, which has spread throughout our community. And whereas the Hopkinton Town Council extends its sincere congratulations to this remarkable couple and sends best wishes that they continue to enjoy lasting happiness for many years to come. Therefore, it is hereby proclaimed that the Hopkinton Town Council adopt this proclamation in recognition of Mr. and Mrs. Burton's 75th wedding anniversary, and request that this proclamation become part of the permanent records of the town of Hopkinton. Does someone make a motion? I'll move that we support the proclamation.
Second, I think it's wonderful.
Motion made and seconded. Any further discussion, folks? Having heard none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
Are either one of them the holder of the Golden Cape?
I don't think so.
No, but that
Is somebody
was a
older?
brother, he just passed. That was in the same pin.
I was going to ask Lisa, once this is done and signed, can we put it in a frame for them? Sure. All right, that would be nice. Thank you.
Okay. Last public forum. Anyone else wishing to be heard tonight? Okay. All right, that concludes the regular town business. We're going to now start the hearing that I think most of us are here for. Number 1, hearing zoning ordinance amendment and comprehensive plan future land use map amendment. Open a hearing to consider an amendment to Hopkinton zoning ordinance and Hopkinton comprehensive plan future land use map filed by Southern Sky Renewable Energy, Rhode Island LLC, 117 Metro Center Boulevard, number 2007, Warren, Rhode Island 02886, for property owned by LR6 and owner LLC and Realty Financial Partners 6, LP, 56 Kearney Road, Suite D, Needham, Mass. 02494, for property located at 130 Dye Hill Road, Hope Valley, Rhode Island, identified as Plat 32, lots 1, 2, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 16, 17, 19, 21, 23, 25, 27, 30, 32, 34, 36, 38, 40, 41, 42, 44, 46, 48, 50, 52, 54, 56, 58, 60, 62, 63, 65, 67, 68, 69, 70, and 71 in RFR 80 zone. The applicants propose to utilize the existing property listed as Assessor's Plat. Now this says Assessor's Plat 39. That's different from the prior description. The one above says Plat 32 with all those lots. Is that supposed to be 32, or is that supposed to be 39? It says 39.
It's 32.
I believe it's 32. Okay, it's not 39. All right, the applicants propose to utilize the existing property listed as Assessor's Plat 32, corrected from 39, lots 1 through 71, which in total contain approximately 358 acres, to construct ground-mounted solar energy array systems. The proposal to utilize the property will require approval from the proposed comprehensive plan future land use map amendment from open space conservation to commercial special, and the zoning map amendment from RFR 80 to commercial special. The applicant is present, and Joe, I guess we can start with your presentation and witnesses.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Good evening, Mr. President, honorable members of the Hopkinton Town Council. For the record, my name is Attorney K. Joseph Shikachi, and I represent the applicant tonight, Southern Sky Renewable Energy, RI LLC. With me tonight, I have 4 expert witnesses who will testify. 3 of them are here. 1 is en route due to a prior commitment, and I believe you will also hear from some of the abutters who we have been in contact with who are in favor of the project. We believe this project is a unique opportunity for the town of Hopkinton. This particular project is a project that has been approved previously by the town, originally for 134 units and a golf course. There was another proposal that followed that, and then the last approval was for anywhere from 116 to 145 units, with 25 of them be affordable. None of those projects have been constructed yet, and that's the operative word, yet. Because of housing pressure and the cost of land and the cost of housing in general, ultimately this project will be developed. You have an opportunity tonight to control the development that we believe is much more productive and much more of a benefit to the town. If this project were approved and the zone change were approved and the comprehensive amendment approved, there would be no housing units, no affordable units, there'd be no roads, wells, or ISDS septic systems. There'll be no children in the school system. It will pay substantial revenue, and at the end of the life of the solar array, the project would return to its state that it is today. We have worked very hard with our surrounding abutting neighbors, along with our engineers, DEM, to provide adequate buffer zones that would meet the requirements. We provided plenty of setbacks for DEM approval. This particular project has a long history in the town. This is the latest chapter. We think it's the best chapter. I would like to first call Mr. David Russo as a professional engineer, from Decreed Engineer. He is the project engineer. He's licensed in Rhode Island. I would offer him as an expert, very briefly, to take the board in the audience through a brief narrative of what we're proposing. And then after that, I would call Mr. Pimento.
Okay, thanks, Rick.
For the record, David.
Yeah. Lisa, you want to swear?
Would you raise your right hand, please? Do you solemnly swear that the testimony you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Thank you.
For the record, David Russo, professional engineer, Decreed Engineering, 2 Stafford Court, Cranston, Maryland. So the site, the subject parcel is a 359-acre site. Has frontage on Dye Hill Road. It's located in one of the more remote areas of Hopkinton. The site map, as you can see, the green on the map is all the wetlands on the site. Those have been flagged by Natural Resource Services, who has a certified biologist. All that flagging is currently pending with DEM for their review, so DEM will go out to the site and walk that flagging and verify the location of those flags. The topography of the site generally slopes from the south, which on the plan in front of you is the left side of the site. Dye Hill Road is the south, and then as you go to the north, to the right, the topography generally slopes up to the north. And for the most part, the southern side, it's a lot of rock on the soil surface on the southern side. And as you get towards the northern end, it starts to get, it's not as much rock on the northern end, and the trees are a little less mature. And there's a forester that will speak a little further about that. Also on the site, which was referred to, there was originally 134-unit development with a golf course, and that developer cut in all the roadway systems, and the lots got created. That was all the lots that were read on the record. So that roadway system was cut in. It was about a 40-foot wide right-of-way when it was cut. There's an existing trail out there now that you can still drive a car through. but the shoulders of that 40-foot right-of-way have grown in. It's noticeable because the trees are all smaller and it's a lot low-lying vegetation in that area. I just wanted to also comment on the last approval master plan. It was 116 to 145 units of single-family houses. Those are 3-bedroom houses. 25% of those would be affordable. And part of that requirement for that type of development on this property, you'd have to have community septics and public drinking water wells, more than likely either community well or private wells on each of those lots. That size development, there was a master plan that our office prepared that was meeting those guidelines. It was approximately 100 acres of clearing, we estimated with that. It should be noted that that type of development, depending on the range that somebody came forward with, whether it was the low end or the high end, could range from 40,000 gallons to 50,000 gallons of effluent per day that would have to be handled in community septic systems. Obviously, the solar field doesn't have any of that. And the reverse of that, if there's any wells on the site, those wells would require 40,000 to 50,000 gallons of draw. And then obviously the traffic along Dival Road and the public right-of-way and the maintenance that would require. Those are all items that this solar project that's proposed tonight won't have on the property. They're proposing a 57.9 megawatt DC solar array. This array is all located outside the wetland buffers. We're not proposing to disturb any areas within the wetland. And on the northwest corner of the property, or the top right of this page, that area has a lot of wetlands. It has some big chunks of uplands, but the developer is not proposing to go in that area, so they're going to leave that area as it is today. The solar development will have a 6-foot high chain link fence around it for security purposes. There'll be no signage on the fence. There's no lighting proposed. There'll be a 20-foot gravel access road through the solar farm for access to all the invert islands. The fire department will have a key to the gate so they can access that. And the fire department will obviously have to review this through the permitting process if we were to get the zone change approved. The DEM would also need to review this. We haven't completed any engineering on this site. There was a lot of testing done on the original residential designs. I'm going to estimate over 100 test holes on this site. I mean, it was littered with test holes when they were trying to do the previous development. So we'd be tasked with Southern Sky to create a drainage plan that conforms to the new DEM regulations. We would have to show that there'd be no increase in stormwater than currently is coming off the site. So if there's 10 drops of rainwater coming off the site today, we cannot increase that. That would be all reviewed by DM and part of their approval that we'd have to receive. The total clearing is estimated around 175 acres, and the solar panel and interrow spacing is approximately 122 acres. That's subject to change when we finalize the engineering. We're expecting to install drainage ponds or detention ponds, infiltration trenches. The roadways could shift when we do the engineering, so that number could fluctuate. I don't expect it to fluctuate big, but it could go one way or the other. And then just in terms of buffering on the site, along the north and the eastern property line is mostly state management land. So that's all just existing woodlands along that area. And then as you get along the southern border, on the southeast, there's residential properties there, but there's a lot of existing wooded area along that. Then, as you can see on the southern tip, there's a green area, which is a wetland. And then as you get out towards Dival Road, there's 4 or 5 residents that currently exist right off Dival Road. And as you start going towards the east side of the property, you start getting more vegetative buffer along the east, and then move back into the wetland and the state-owned land. We will have a landscape architect involved in this project. They will look at the buffering on the property, mainly the southern area where the existing residents are. We don't feel that the buffering on the other areas is really necessary due to all the existing vegetation in those areas. Be happy to answer any questions the board may have.
think we're waiting to the end.
You want to go to the end? Okay, Dave, thanks, Dave.
Thank you. The next witness I'd like to call is Mr. Pimento, but before I have that go up, I just want to touch on a few points that Dave Russo made in terms of the engineering and the clearing. I just want to focus the board, a little bit of the town council, is that some of this area has already been cleared. A small amount of this has already been cleared, relatively speaking. In addition to that, if there's going to be a development at some point, there's going to be clearing as well. We will provide later in the hearing or in subsequent hearing a forestry expert and a reforesting plan as well, as David said, a landscaping plan. Some of the trees, I know you just talked about it in the opening, but some of these trees are diseased. So they're basically dead trees anyway, and we'll be able to address that later in the evening as well. My client also, I wanted to say to the council, my client also developed another solar project in town on Alty Road, and in that project he worked with the land trust to secure a relocation of an easement to make that project approvable and viable. And he had a very good experience with the land trust, and we reached out to them to hopefully to try to secure their support as well. And unfortunately, we were not able to do that tonight. However, my client has authorized me, we've gone through some of the public articles in the Westerly Times, Westerly Sun, I should say, and we noticed that the town has a school, the Ashway School, the old Ashway School building, that's in need of demolition. If this project were to be approved by this honorable town council, we would offer, instead of a contribution to the land trust, to make that same contribution directly to the town, or the responsibility of, we would take down that school and demo it for the town. We would do so at our own expense. We would do it independently with a licensed Rhode Island demolition company, and we would bond it to make sure it happens. And we would do that not before we, started the project, but we would do it before, not after. We would do it after we got our municipal and state approvals. So if for some reason we had a delay with National Grid, we would still honor that commitment to the town. And that's a big thing, because sometimes National Grid takes a long time to connect, and as we like to say, turn the switch on. And we know that this is a time-sensitive issue. I was reading yesterday some of the articles, and, so we know it's important to the town, and we would do so in a timely fashion. We just throw that out there because my client has been a good neighbor. He wants to continue to be a good neighbor, whether it's the land trust or the town in general. And I'd like to now call Mr. Pimento and ask him to also be sworn in as a planning expert as well. Thank you.
Do you solemnly swear that the testimony you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? So help
I
you
do.
God. Thank you.
Edward Pimentel, that's Pimentel. When I was asked to get involved in the project, I was asked to do two things. Number one, to consider the proposal of introduction of a solar array given the Hopkinton zoning regulations, and you have a quite recently adopted comprehensive plan. It's fairly new. There's been a state mandate to all 39 cities and towns since the last iteration for the municipalities to amend their comprehensive plans, and that is for all 39 cities and towns to consider, either as a new element in their comprehensive plan, or as an adjunct to their community and facilities element, to consider how they're going to address energy needs, both locally and then statewide. There's a mandate to try to acquire a certain percentage of energy from renewable sources within a matter of years, and they're hoping all the communities can contribute in whatever manner they can see feasible, and to consider so from renewable sources. Hydro, wind, solar, etc. The state has taken on some of that activity. They did a mapping of the state of Rhode Island for wind purposes. The problem with that is there's very few areas where you can justify putting wind turbines just because of the lack of wind resources. Solar, on the other hand, is a very viable and productive means of realizing renewable energy, and that's why all the cities and towns have begun to address solar and incorporate regulations in their ordinance. The town of Hopkinton is no different. In reviewing your regulations, it's a fairly new ordinance. You adopted the solar, but you only did it as a permissible use in your very limited commercial and industrial zoned resources. So as I was reviewing that and looking through your comprehensive plan as to what the intent was from that perspective, I said it couldn't have been the intent to exhaust all of your commercial and industrial resources simply to introduce solar, because you have such limited resources, and all municipalities need a certain percentage of commercial and industrial to accommodate its residents' needs. Your residents, your offices, your light manufacturing, etc. So I came to the conclusion that what probably the objective of this council was to control where solar projects got placed. So therefore, when a viable project comes forward, is presented to the planning board for an advisory opinion, and then ultimately presented to the council for approval, it gives the opportunity of this council to determine whether the site is in fact appropriate. A, by zone change, and then realizing consistency with the comprehensive plan. That determination was based on several things. Number one, when we did adopt a solar ordinance, some communities have adopted solar ordinances in a blanket form. Others have adopted it in forms of gradualness. Small, large, medium-sized solar farms. Those limited sizes were not within your ordinance. There was no limitation on the size, so therefore I concluded it had to be based on the fact that the council wants to have some regulatory control. Number two, even pursuant to your comprehensive plan, one of the goals and objectives states that, and this is policy PSF 17, is to encourage renewable energy projects in the private sector. Under recommendation 18, it goes on to state, consider expanding the current zoning regulations to allow photovoltaic installations in residential districts. The RF80 comprises approximately 80 to 90% of the entire town. Other than that, there's limited land resources, like I said, for commercial and industrial and a few other remaining zoning designations. So if there was going to be a solar farm of a sizable nature, it would have to ultimately be located in the RF80. It couldn't be located in the industrial commercial because you would basically consume all those resources, and that cannot be the intent of the town. So having determined that, it was my conclusion that introducing, in general, a solar farm in the RF80 is not inherently inconsistent with the comprehensive plan, provided A, you pursue the appropriate zone change, and B, you can also seek an amendment to your future land use map, because as a matter of law, even though textually we would be consistent, you also have to be internally consistent with your future land use map. So what this comes down to is the appropriateness of the subject site. As has been testified to, the site, this particular site is very unique. It's already been approved for an affordable housing development of in excess of 100 units, market rate and affordable. Number two with that would be vast disturbance of this property in perpetuity, unlike a solar array, where there's always a reforestation program. Number three is the infrastructural improvements that would have to be introduced. The one thing that is true of most of the rural communities in the state of Rhode Island is that in many of them, they actually support solar array in your low-density residential districts because of the offsetting impact of by-right residential developments versus these types of projects that don't require any infrastructure. And it's typically in communities that don't have the infrastructure. You don't have a private public water or public sewage. And finally, this project, even at its, and there's still calculations being done as to how much clearing would be required, but even at its worst conclusion, 50% or greater would still remain in its natural state. So there'd be great areas of protection and buffer. So when you give all those considerations, and in this case, which really unique is, and as it will be provided later, is support from many of the either direct abutters or those with standing, meaning the 200-foot radius, I would say the subject site is quite appropriate for a solar farm, and it can be deemed consistent with the comprehensive plan.
I'd just like to request that the council does have a copy of Mr. Pimento's report, and I ask that be introduced formally if it has to be. And I'll defer to your solicitor if it has to be.
I'm not sure, do we have that, Nancy?
The fourth, I'm not sure which
It's
plan.
the Pimento report.
I don't think we have.
We don't have
Okay,
that.
then I'd offer it I would like a copy of each one. I'd like to offer it as petitioner's exhibit number 1. And I just ask,
One for Councilor Buck.
And I also have a copy of my resume.
sure, please, Mr. Clemento.
Thank you.
Sorry.
Here you go. Do you have this?
I don't have that. I need the big one.
I was
Well,
told,
then we can give you the
I
one
can
for
bring
Tom.
additional, I was told it was forwarded from the planning board on, but I can bring extra copies if you wish.
Well, you want one mark. You want to mark one, and what I can do is I can make a copy of it.
Yeah.
Oh, and one more.
Oh, okay.
There you
I
go.
was holding on to my copy.
So these into the record, I guess.
Thank you.
Okay.
I'd like to call Nicole from Sage Engineering, Environmental Engineering, please.
Do you solemnly swear that the testimony you are about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God? I do. Thank you.
Nicole, could you please tell council who you are and where your area of expertise is and what kind of analysis you've done on this particular project? Thank you.
Hi, I'm Nicole Melanaphy, Mulanaphy. I'm a professional engineer with Sage Environmental. They're based in Pawtucket, Rhode Island. And what I did was evaluate the environmental conditions at this site. We just did the initial evaluation to understand kind of if there would be any potential concerns in regards to the environment and habitat and wildlife. I'm just going to put up, thank you. So as previously mentioned, 175 acres of the 350 acre lot will be cleared, and most of the lot is wooded and unmaintained. There is an access road, and there is one residential house located on there. It's bordered by residential and conservation land. There is, the way that the panels will be set up is such that there's islands that they're combining all of the inverters and transformers similar to other projects that you have looked at. And so the figure that you see over here, you should also have it in front of you that was supplied a few weeks ago. This is in the very beginning. It's referred to as figure 2. It's at the beginning portion of it. And so that shows you the locations of the different inverter islands. And in each of those islands, there's 12 to 26 inverters with one transformer. So that totals of 452 inverters and 21 transformers. They range between 339 feet to 1,529 feet from the property line. The panels will be enclosed with a 6-foot-high fence with the 6 inches of raised fabric, so the fencing to protect from a security perspective, but to still allow small wildlife to come in and out from the property. The next figure in the document, figure 3, shows the different areas of conservation that are nearby. So it does directly border Arcadia management area, and then the rest of it is residential area. As previously mentioned, it's zoned R80 residential with low density residential in the comprehensive plan. And the soils on site in the wetland area are hydric. And the areas that will be used for development are stony, fine sands.
Thank you.
The next one, please. There is just some small sections of soil that's been deemed as prime farmland. They are relatively small from a farming perspective. The USDA says typically farms are 45 acres or larger. So there's not enough from a farming perspective. Next one, please. This next map, it's figure 6 in the document that you're looking at. This is showing the groundwater and wellhead protection area. So as the entire town of Hopkinton, it is in the Pawtucket Aquifer. There is a very small portion where it does recharge to the aquifer, but the solar panels are not going to have any groundwater impact in regards to contaminating or any concerns from that perspective. Next slide. We looked at if there's any concerns from a flooding perspective. There is a small section that is in the 100-year flood zone, but as you can see, there's no intended solar panels to be in that, so there's not a concern from a flooding perspective. Next one, please. We also looked at it from a wildlife perspective. Is there any areas to be concerned of from a wildlife protection? The Rhode Island EM has put together a wildlife action plan where they identified areas that are suitable for conservation. And so one of the things that they identify is natural heritage. So that's the area where there's potentially endangered or sensitive species. And so there's not an observation on the site, but there is if you take a buffer of that, what they advise in the wildlife action plan, there is a very small portion of the site. But if you actually look at Dupree's image below, it right borders the wetlands. And so as part of the development, what we did was, and the orientations of the maps are actually switched, mine versus what Dupree has. You'll see that there's no development near there. It's actually 900 feet away, the closest panel from that buffer area, where you see that brown, which is the natural heritage, to where the closest solar panel is. And so the species that was identified to have a potential in that area is marbled salamander, which is not an endangered species, it's a sensitive species. They breed in wetlands, so the wetlands are being protected on this site, and there's not going to be any development, so there's not an expected concern in regards to any sensitive species, especially the marbled salamander. Next slide, please. We looked at to make sure that there's no potential in regards of removing any agricultural use, and as you can see, it's all woodland area, forested area. There's no agricultural area. That's figure 9 in the document that you're looking at. Next slide, please. We had a certified forester go out and assess the land. He will speak in more detail in regards to this. But what he did was he evaluated the health of the forest, and he broke it up into different areas. And he did find that in the northern tip of it on the hill, there is significant damage due to gypsy moth. It's about 69 acres of it. So about 40% of what's going to be cleared is already dead or dying due to the gypsy moth infection. The healthiest portion of the forest is in the southeast and southwest portion, which there is some small portion of that is going to be used for the solar panels. In total, there's 34,650 trees that have the potential to be removed. 34,654. But of those, 40% of them are dead or dying. So the remaining of those are what would be clear that are healthy trees. But to put that into comparison, if this was to be developed into a residential neighborhood that has 116 to 140 units, typically units have about an acre of land cleared. So it's just 17 to 30% more than what would happen if it was residential. So even if you were to use it from a residential perspective, you would still have thousands of trees that would be cleared from a residential perspective. Next slide, please. We looked to see if there was any identification further in regards to protection from forested, and it is part of an unfragmented forest as it does border Arcadia management area. However, it is right on the edge, so it's not causing, by doing any development here, it's not causing a cutoff of any of the unfragmented forest. The development of it will create natural meadows. It's going to have the fencing around it, so it's going to protect it from deer coming in and eating and taking away habitat from small wildlife. So in a sense, it's creating a meadow area. Part of the landscaping plan that Dave Rousseau explained is going to be in the process is we'll be looking and considering what vegetation will be planted in that area to try to promote habitat for species that are sensitive, as it is dwindling in the state of Rhode Island due to so many deer eating away at habitat. Next slide, please. We also evaluated the sound. So as I mentioned earlier, there's 473 objects on the property that will emit sound. 452 of them are inverters, and 21 are transformers. And in all cases, the sound does not exceed 40 decibels, which is the threshold by the World Health Organization for nighttime waking. So in this case, the unit, you wouldn't have any sound generated in the evening, it would be during the day, but it's a conservative threshold to look at in regards to anybody that may be home during the day, that it would be a non-noticeable sound. And so that's looking at all 473 objects and looking at the sound throughout the entire site. And that's it. Does anybody have any questions? Okay.
Thank you. Mr. President, I have one other expert to testify. He's not here at the moment. He had a prior engagement, but he will be coming at this time. If the
Just arrived.
Oh, okay. Just arrived, even better. So I'll call Mr. Mark Trump, he's a forestry expert. Right on time. And just for the record, Mr. President, the report that was just referred to by the previous witness, you have a copy of, I believe, in front of you. I think you're all looking at
Land
it.
management services?
Yes, thank you. Dave, just identify yourself for the record, they'll swear you in. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Mark Tremblay.
Do you solemnly swear that the testimony you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? So help you God.
I do.
Thank you.
Could you briefly tell the council your area of expertise and your analysis of what you did on this petition, please?
Well, I'm a consultant forester with about 40 years of experience just working in the woods, developing management plans, and helping people manage their woodlots. Most of that time here in Rhode Island. So I'm licensed in Massachusetts and certified in Connecticut, and have an arborist license in Rhode Island because Rhode Island doesn't have a certification or licensing program for foresters. There's not that many of us, I guess. What I did in my forest assessment report, which you have in front of you, is basically just walk the site, which is what I typically do when I do an inventory for developing a management plan, but in this case, I basically just wanted to break the property up into various cover types, and those are influenced by the soils and the species of trees. It could be a pine stand, it could be an oak stand, it could be upland, lowland, various soil and water conditions that would influence the overstory and the understory conditions. As part of that, I just do inventory plots, and typically an inventory plot will take into account a measurement, it's just a statistical sampling. It's a way to measure how many trees there are per acre, the average diameters. And when we do that, and you see the numbers of trees in your report per acre, that's everything from 4-inch diameter trees up to all the larger trees that might be present. So the average acre is going to contain the 200 and so trees per acre. Some acres are more, some are less. And I also looked at the forest health conditions in order to determine what relative value that forest may have. And relative value is just that. Some people value their forest for wildlife habitat or the aesthetic values, while others may view the timber value. So forest health is going to have an impact on what that benefit is. And in the case that was stated earlier, the stand 1, which is that northern upland site, has been hit pretty hard by the gypsy moth, as has a lot of Rhode Island. If you've driven around, you know what I mean. So, you know, up to 2/3 of the trees in some areas of Rhode Island, of the oaks, are dead. In this case, this area was logged pretty heavily about 20 or 30 years ago. And there wasn't much of an overstory. The trees were very small in diameter. A lot of them were small in diameter. There's basically the response from the heavy cut from 20 or 30 years ago, those trees that have grown back since, which are relatively small, short. It's very dry, upland soils, very rocky, so there's not a whole lot of healthy growth up there. Just a lot of understory, basically. Down in the lower slope sites where you have the pine stands, which you can see in the aerial photograph, the green, that's a nice winter view where there's leaves off. So you can see all the pine trees in there, so that's a good representation of that. And so you got the old farm fields at the bottom of the hill. And so there's a fair amount of pine established in those areas. Some good soils. That stand 3 up at the southeast portion of the property is an area, for some reason, that the gypsy moth didn't do a whole lot of destruction, and the logging didn't take place. So that's one of the better pockets of trees that are mature oaks, maples, pines. So that's basically a summary of
That concludes our presentation, and I would say all of the witnesses are available for recall. I also have the principal with me, Mr. Ralph Palumbo. If at any time the council has questions, he's available as well, and we will do our best to answer any questions from you or members of the public.
Okay, thanks, Joe. We'll start with the
Thank you.
council. Thank you. Who wants to, I guess we'll start in the order that they were presented, I guess. So it's Mr. Russo, I believe, first. So you want to start with
Sure.
Mr. Russo? I guess?
Well, I'm just going to throw it out there. Whoever you choose to have answer it, then you'll
Okay.
call.
Sure, thank you.
Yeah, and some of it is easily handled, I hope. There are a number of documents that we would like to have. I certainly would like to have before I can entertain a positive reply or decision. The stormwater management report, the soil erosion and sediment control plan. During construction, what plan will, how will you deal with, what are the pollution control issues when you're doing your construction? And I do want the associated maps larger than just 8 by 11. It could be a fold out, just, you know, what is it, the fold outs are 16 inches, I'm not sure, but you know what I mean. I'm not expecting you to bring in the full maps. The wetlands alteration report, I don't know if it's going to be insignificant or not. The lands, you've got a landscape, you had a landscape or forest expert come in, but I would like to see the map that reflects. What are you going to be doing about? Are there any plantings you're going to be? In other words, what would you normally put in that map, which tells us a lot? If there are any trees or understory or any of those things you need to do.
The current condition of the reforesting.
Not the reforestation. That would be something that we would hope you would do or we would ask that a reforestation bond that you would submit. We'd like to see that, so that when this project, whenever it ends, they would plant trees. The other things that I would like to see is goes by a few different names, but I know you know what I'm talking about. The System Impact Study for Interconnection to National Grid. That document that tells you what it is you have to do to please the National Grid. The Stormwater Facilities Maintenance Agreement is something that I would like to see and it's something that's between the owner and the owner and the town. DEM provides this. They call it the sample stormwater facility maintenance agreement, and it's between, it can be between the applicant or the owner and DEM. But we also want it to be between the applicant and the town of Hopkinton. It requires that is whenever the landowner, its assessors, assigns, wherever, whatever happens with the property, whoever ends up owning it, this document will allow the town of Hopkinton or its agents or employees or whatever to enter the property to inspect the stormwater management facilities whenever the town deems it necessary. What we have done, and also because if there's a complaint or a problem, what we've done recently is ask that every month during construction, a town, probably the town engineer, would go onto the property and have access to all the reports that you give to DEM or any changes that there may be. And so we'd like to see that happen every month, and it's at the applicant or owner's expense. And then after construction is all over, the town would be able to go on there for just a yearly, like in April, to make sure everything's going the way you would want it to go.
Would you like that as like a recorded document that runs with the land and be?
Yes, yes. This is I mean, I can give you my copy so you know exactly what I'm talking about. This is from the stormwater maintenance plan, and you're right. It does have. Let me hand it to you so you know exactly what I'm talking about. It's something DEM provides. The other, I know we talked, you touched on the wildlife in the action plan, which brings up some of the other things that have been done with some recent solar projects that are around the property. Bird boxes, nesting boxes would be put up. And now I'll get in, I think that's everything that we need to see before we can make a decision. I noticed that on the map, you have a map that shows where the 100-year flood is.
One of the
It's
sage.
way down in the corner.
Yes.
And from just the small size of a map, I would like to know the distance between the 100-year flood and the panels.
The nearest
You
panel?
can't, the nearest panels, you can't tell looking at a small map.
Okay.
Is there anybody there that can fill that in?
I'd ask that, Cole.
And if it takes a little while, I'll go on to another question.
I'd also like to call Mr. Russo up because some of the documents that you requested, I don't really know at what point.
Status.
Where they are, and also what point in the permitting process that we have to provide those for DEMs. I think some of them are later down the road, but we can certainly condition that, or we provide you whatever we have or we'll be getting, we'll certainly give to you. It's public information anyway, so why wouldn't we give it to you?
All the documents that you referred to, we do have to prepare as required by DEM.
Right.
So as I said, the application right now, the property's at DEM for wetland edge review. That could take them another month or two to complete with all the field work that they have to complete. We are in the process of working on some of those reports. The soil erosion report, we could get to you, that'd be pretty complete. It's a pretty standard document. The operation and maintenance manual, we're still working out, looking at what type of drainage may be on the site, but again, that's for the most part standard maintenance for certain systems that are on site. Everything you said in regards to inspections is it's mainly required for them to be completing inspections, and if the town wants to be made aware of those and come on the site, we can include that in that document. The stormwater management document, which talks about how we reduce the runoff to the wetlands, how we're not going in the wetlands. That's something that we're working on. With the timing of that may be difficult, but we can work with the town on that document. And then lastly, there's a question about insignificant or significant. Right now, we've met with DEM to discuss the site. It's our take that we can get this permit as an insignificant alteration. We're not proposing any work or significant grading in the wetland areas. There's one existing crossing that was built by the past developer, the first developer, that carved in the roads. That road's still there. We're talking to DM about possibly utilizing that as a utility connection crossing, but not proposing any additional site work in there. So we're expecting it to be reviewed and approved as an insignificant alteration.
The other items, I'll just go down the list, that we have in the past attached to any approval that we gave was we don't want any blasting, no blasting on the site, no soil removal. We need to know the type of panels. Are they for 30-year or 40-year or 20-year? I mean, you can let us know what type of panels they are. The timing of the construction and when do you hope for it to start if this gets approved, and what would the length of time be during construction? How long would it take to do everything you want to do? We don't want any chemicals of any kind for defoliation or anything that's. We want you to use weed whackers or lawnmowers, and of course that brings up, if you're cutting down trees, what happens to the stumps? Will they be kept on site? Is that the plan? Or what do you plan on doing with the stumps? So that was another question. We already mentioned we'd like to see a reforestation bond, and of course there'd always be a decommissioning bond as well. Damage, another one is damage to the road and the route that you're going to be taking. There are options. For instance, if you leaving the site turned west or south to head for 138, you would go up the hill. You would not want to take the next left, which is, it's not Sawmill, it's no, it's not Dye Hill. It's where the Woody Hill, it's the bridge. The bridge there is not, the bridge needs to be worked on, so it's just not safe for large vehicles.
4-ton bridge.
What's that?
The bridge is rated at 4 tons.
Yeah, there's a problem with that bridge, so you can't go that way, and we wouldn't want you to head toward, we wouldn't want you to go down Fairview Avenue or head east or north. We would want the shortest distance, and I think it may be that the shortest and best distance is to drive, when you're coming out of the site, you take a right, you go up the hill, and you head for 138. It's a shorter way to get to the main road.
So, all valid points, I'd like to try to address some of them. So, we would certainly, and you have the ability as the council, if you deem this project any kind of approval, to write these in as restrictions in terms of routes, hours of operation, no chemicals, all of that stuff. If that's something you've done with other projects, we have no objection that we do it with this project. We sit down and accept them and work with them and follow those conditions, restrictions. The stuff you asked for DEM, we can get whatever we have, and in the process of getting, we'll provide to you. Some of that stuff, some of it, not all of it, comes later on. If we're successful here, we have to go back to the Planning Commission for one or possibly 2 other hearings, and that could also be a long process as well. So we will provide everything, before one blade of grass gets cut down, and we do this, we'll have all our permits, and we'll make sure that everybody is satisfied from the town, state, DEM, etc. You asked a question about the distance between the solar panel and that 100-year storm was at a minimum 60 feet, maybe a little bit longer, but I'll just say 60 feet from the nearest solar panel to the proposed 100-year storm flooding.
Also, one of the things, I know that, I forget which document, it was either Sage or the form you filled out for the town. It was one of the other documents that you already gave to the clerk. In there was mention of, their abutters are spread out. There's many on Dye Hill Road, and then there's others on Woody Hill Road. But anyway, my point that I wanted to make is, the site itself, the boundary line, just the boundary line, is a certain distance to the boundary lines of all the abutters. And I wondered if you could go to the map and point out, you can see where some of the housing is, but for anyone here and for us too, to just go through the numbers. And I don't, from memory, I don't think there was any boundary line that was close to another, well, I guess you can't, it's not the boundary line, it would be the panels themselves. I tell you what, for instance, down where there are many houses on Dye Hill Road.
I'm going to defer to David Russo.
Yeah.
He can probably answer
Go
that.
through it.
Point one by one, he can hopefully answer your questions,
Yeah,
Councilor.
it's not really, it's the project itself, the disturbance of the forest, cutting down the forest. How far away will you be from your beginning to cut down trees to residents? I saw a lot of 300s and
Yeah.
400s and 500 feet. So I wanted to know if there were any that were closer. So maybe you could go around it and you could tell me.
I'll defer to David on that, thank you.
For the record, Dave Russo. To answer that question, the closest tree removal or clearing is along the south side. And these abutters are approximately 250 feet to the nearest panels. It's about a 100-foot vegetated strip they're proposing to leave. And then there's another 150 to the panel. That's probably the closest one. As you go south, this resident, the closest is in that area. They're approximately 800, 900 feet away to the panel area. And then this is all the state land as you go around the site. And then to the north, there's some abutters up here, but we're proposing to leave all this wetland area up here. So this wetland is about, this area is about 980 feet. This area is about 770 feet. And that doesn't include the wooded area on their property. That's just from our property line to the edge of our clearing. And then as you go further south, you can see that on the maps there's a lot of existing wooded vegetation off our site. In this area, we are proposing due to the shading to clear up to the property line. But again, in this area, the existing residents that are along Woody Hill Road, there's clearing here. It's about 200 feet away. And as you get further, it's upwards of 1,000 feet as you get closer to this area up here. And then there's a wetland and a stream system on the southernmost area. We're not proposing any work in there. So there'll be a buffer. Still along most of that entrance road, there'll still be a buffer besides the roadway coming in.
Where you had noted where there was about 100-foot distance on one of the properties, what's that 100 feet going to look like? Or what does it look like now, or what will it look like? So that these people who go in their backyard or look out the back window can't see it. They see forest just like they used to, or whatever's there, that's what they see. Or is there a forest, or do you have to put one in? Do you have to start planting?
There's vegetation along this currently today. We're proposing to keep that. As I said earlier, we are going to have a landscape architect involved. He will go out and look at this area, and if it needs to have supplemental planting to increase that buffer, or if the landscape architect feels it would be better to leave that 100 feet and then plant a buffer outside the 100 feet just to shore it up. But I'll leave that up to the landscape architect.
I can only speak for myself, but I bet if this is going to go forward, we would want you to guarantee that whatever you have to do for that area, if it needs understory or some more trees in an area, so that people who are on their back deck or on the first floor can't see it, that there's forest.
So that's an excellent point, and I want to thank you. And I will tell you that we proactively have met with those neighbors in that area, and we know what they want, and we're going to give it to them.
All right.
So,
Can you tell us what they want?
well, I'll let them tell you.
Okay.
How's that?
Okay.
And that way you don't have to say it came from the lawyer, the big bad lawyer.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you. I think I'm all set for now.
Barbara?
Yeah, I do have a number of questions. So, I'm going to go start with Dave, the engineer. Roads are already in, is my understanding, because they did some preliminary work on the prior project. That's correct?
I wouldn't call them roads,
Right.
but like dirt trail paths, and we've driven the site in a truck. You can get around
Like
the
an
site.
ATV, it's not very wide, I think.
It's about just wide enough for,
But so my question with the roads, though, is that you have roads already in there, and you're going to reuse what you can, because that's already obviously been cleared, but then you will also add whatever else you may need, would be my assumption.
I mean, the earthwork that, we haven't held the road, if the question is to hold the existing road with our road, we're not. It has to do with the panel configuration and the location of the
So
road.
you'll be changing the position of that?
That is correct.
Whatever is in there now will not remain?
Correct.
Okay, that's fine. You said it was 57.9 megawatts solar?
Correct.
Okay, I wasn't sure. And my understanding is that it goes from the south to the north, and it goes uphill.
That is correct.
It's about 1,000 feet? Elevation change?
I don't think I gave the distance, it's pretty significant.
I remember 1,000 feet, that's why.
Yeah, I mean, it just gradually goes up, and then it does dive down where the wetlands are located. It does have some steep hills that go down. And then
On the north side? And in the middle?
Right where the crossings are, it dives down into the
Right,
wetlands and then back up. But it consistently goes towards the
Okay,
north.
so from the majority, you know, a lot of the abutters here are approving the project.
Sure.
But what I want to make sure of is somewhat what Sylvia had said, is that they are buffered thoroughly. The eastern side, which is the top long one, I'm assuming those houses are actually much further away from your border.
Yeah, when you say eastern side, just to clarify, you're talking about, because the eastern side of this is to the...
No, I'm sorry, the western side?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. So the western side, the houses are actually quite far back from your border anyway.
Correct.
Okay. And then when you get to the southern side, one of the things the forester said is that the southeast pocket has some of the best trees. It would be really nice if you didn't cut those. And that southeast pocket is right behind a number of the abutters on the south.
I can point to that. That map that the Forest Service was speaking about generally is in this area, the southeast corner, which there's really no residents in that area. There's one residential property, but that house is further.
So those houses are further away?
Correct. There's two.
And so are
small-
you, because that's a good portion of trees that are not damaged, you might consider keeping some of those because they're a great side buffer? Or will you be cutting those down as well? I understand cutting down ones that are dead.
I mean, they'll look at them with the forester and keep as many as they can, but that is part of the development area.
So they may take those trees that are nice and they'll end up down.
Not all of them, some.
Right, but I think from the position here, it's substantial, which is unfortunate, since those are some of the nicer ones. I was hoping that you could also, even where the abutters are very happy with you, that you move as far back as you can to try to give them more space. My concern is when you take down trees, and trees are 4 inches in diameter, you don't plant them back as 4 inches in diameter or greater. Obviously, you plant saplings, which are much smaller, and they'll take a lot longer to grow in. So anytime you can take those areas where you do have houses, really right next to your property, give them more space, because there aren't that many, and they are actually for your project. So if there's anything you can do as a good neighbor to try to back off from them, I'd appreciate it.
That's a very question.
You know, because even though they're approving of it, by the time it actually goes in and you're going upgrade, you're going to see things. It's just, you're going to. So anything we can prevent as well and as thickly as we can would be very nice. So I'd like to see that. Your planning expert was interesting because a lot of what you said is absolutely true. And when we did do the comp plan, our commercial projects were to be commercial. Solar was not in the array. It wasn't even recommended by the state at that point. So this is a brand new application that we have to deal with where the comp plan is concerned. That is correct, and it is a difficulty for all towns, not just Hopkinton. the endangered species. I'm glad you're staying away from them. Thank you very much, makes me happy. I also wanted to know if the forester or Nicole from Sage, are you also talking to DEM's Fish and Wildlife to see what can be done in, now you're creating a meadow around a very heavily forested area to encourage the growth of all the not small animals, but also all of the blueberry bushes, small bushes, things that people can grow. You can grow under a solar panel without injuring the solar panel, but you could encourage, especially we have a lot of hunters, but to encourage cottontails and pheasants and turkey and fox and voles and all of the others. Because I know they're working on it, and I know they're not probably very far at it, but I would really hope that.
So that's the intention, to be working with the landscaper and the supplemental plantings that would occur in there to promote that type of food and habitat to really, all those wildlife that are kind of suffering from not having enough habitat because it's been taken away from them and eaten by deer. So that's the intention of the supplemental planting.
Yeah, I think it's not just by deer, it's the fact that people like trees. And so they let the trees grow, and so you no longer have meadows.
Right.
And you no longer have pastures, and you no longer have the leaves that all of these animals need. So I think it's actually a good thing.
Fish and Wildlife they actually are trying to do that in some areas, as I know we've talked about before in the Thatch area, where they're actually trying to promote more meadows and really give some wildlife some habitat that they need.
And I'm interested in under solar panels, so you don't have to weed whack and you don't have to use chemicals, that you allow something that's low growing to grow there, because there's no reason you have to deal with it. Just let it grow and ignore it, and let animals live in there as they choose. So I am very interested in how you're going to do this, because this is a very large tract of land, and it's very large acreage. Your point was well taken on the amount of houses that you take down, the amount of trees you take down for houses, but you have to remember this was also trees taken down for houses and a golf course. And the golf course would have taken even more trees down for all the fairways. So we have been addressing this problem for a while. My concern on Deprete, on engineering, is when you are when you're going to be doing all the runoff, because it's all running off to that south. The runoff from all those wetlands, it's all going downhill, effectively, which goes right into all those nice neighbors that like you. So I would like you to make sure that you and the neighbors make sure that the retention basins, everything is thoroughly protecting them, because they are the downhill slide. And I really don't want to hear from you when it flies. I think for the moment, that's it. But I would like the forester to make sure they try to put in some bigger trees instead of all these little wooden things that don't matter.
And I just want to clarify, just to make sure there wasn't any confusion, because I had said endangered was concerned that I was referring to there being endangered species on the property. There is none that we are aware of. So the idea is the supplemental planting is to actually plant the vegetation and the habitat to actually promote a home for endangered species so that we can start bringing some of them back and provide
I think that's
that.
very wise, and I do hope that works. That would be actually beneficial, because we have hunters here and fishermen, not just residential owners that go to Providence to work.
Yeah.
Nicole, don't go away.
Yes.
Yeah, I think.
Claude, I'll jump right to the things I got a question. Did you show me an aquifer map up there at one point?
I did. Would you like to see
Can I
it
see
again?
that again?
Sure.
And the reason why I say that is because I was down in that southern.
Yeah, so that's
Hers is a reverse from everything.
There's something with a big weed thing in the corner.
Yeah.
I just want to make sure the aquifer is where. There's no salt panels. Oh, the purple thing, yeah.
So it matches the same direction as what you've been looking at.
Okay, right.
With debris.
So based on this map I have right here, attachment one, it certainly looks like you're gonna have some solar panels on top of that aquifer. Yeah?
So this is the groundwater recharge area for
Right.
the aquifer.
Right.
And yes, there would be some solar panels in there. However, there is no potential for contamination. The runoff, there's no contamination, that they're inert.
Okay.
So there's no concern. Whereas if we were to put this as residential, there would be concern from your ISDS. If it was a golf course, all of the treatment, if it was a turf farm, all of the nitrates that get in there. So in regards to having any type of recharge area, a solar farm provides inert conditions that are not going to cause any potential contamination. They're not going to use any chemicals during any of the reducing the size of any vegetation around the solar panels.
Okay, that's what I want to know, because there's definitely going to be solar panels on top of that. I want to make sure that it was understood that we don't need
Yes.
clearing that vegetation. One other thing too, every time I see you at one of these installations, I question your noise. This noise map I've got here in front of me.
Yes.
And yes, the noise decreases as it emanates out.
Correct.
And it's affected, obviously, by trees and bushes and anything else.
Correct.
All right. This map that you're showing me here, this map right here, which shows all this wonderful decreasing of noise, okay? Yeah, we get a big map there, right? Is that based on 6-foot, 8-foot solar panels? Is that based on the trees that are going to be cut down and not going to be there? Because I think I told you a couple months ago in the previous project, I said, I live on Wyoming Pond. I can hear people word for word across Wyoming Pond. They've got to be 150 yards away. I can hear everything they say. It comes right across the pond. Now, if there's no trees in the solar array, anything that makes noise in there is just going to come right across until it hits something, whether it's somebody's house or something, or some trees. So what do those circles represent based on what's going to happen here?
Right. So the noise calculations were very conservative in the sense that we assumed that everything is clear, which is not the case.
Right.
There are going to be trees, there are going to be bushes, there are going to be structures on the property that are going to reduce the travel of the sound.
Right.
These calculations assume that there's nothing blocking it, as if it's a pond across the way. And what we're looking at from a sound perspective, the noise generated by the inverter or transformer is quieter than a human's voice. So normal conversation sound is less than that. When you're looking at 40 decibels, so it's very hard to see from here, but there's this kind of hot pink color around it.
Yes, there is.
So that's 40 decibels. That is typical wildlife background sound. So if you were walking in the woods and just listening to, the wind kind of just rustling the leaves a little bit and just that static sound, that's 40 decibels. And so they are very quiet equipment, but we do look to make sure, because there's a lot of quiet equipment, when you put them on, they do generate sound. But as you do move away from it, it follows the inverse square law, which means every distance every doubling of distance, it's quartered, and then it continues as it goes.
I think that in one of the projects, probably 2 previous projects ago, I mentioned the fact that if there is a problem with the noise, I'm just saying if there is, I'd like to see the developers of this project, if it's approved, the zoning change it approved, create some kind of a sound barrier, and I think that's possible. If we can put up some sound absorbency material or something like around these things without harming the operation of them, right?
Correct. So the nice thing about the way that this is designed is all the sound emitting objects are grouped together.
Yep.
And so if for some reason they were creating a sound nuisance, they can be encapsulated in soundproofing material. So they have these curtains that could go around them, and the curtains can reduce the sound. You could, there's fiberboards that are designed for reducing sounds. It all depends on how noisy or objectable it is. The other thing is sometimes just the additional vegetation that will be planted can also help with that. So it depends if it were to be a problem, there are options to further reduce the sound.
Like I say, if everything is approved, if we say yes to
Correct.
this whole idea, and this goes in, and there is a noise problem, I'd like to see something in the agreement with the proposers of this that says, yes, we will construct something to reduce the noise by 20 decibels or whatever it may be.
Yeah.
Other than that, I'm done with it.
Okay.
Can I borrow you for just a moment? I just want to ask her what she's up there. I've seen this 3 times now. QRT. 3 times now. I didn't want to say.
Thank you.
Ms. Bell?
Yes.
Please stand.
I'll just throw these 3 things out. I believe it was mentioned in the comprehensive plan that the town would, likes to see solar in RFR8. Is that how it was phrased? Is that how I took it up?
No, what I said was that there's no limiting on the size of the type of solar projects that you're proposing. Some communities within their ordinances, they actually define and distinguish between types of solar farms, right? They talk small, medium, and large, and they base them on quantity of kilowatts, megawatts.
Right.
I said that the town of Hopkinton basically did an all blanket. We think solar array is appropriate, but we want to limit them to the commercial industrial districts.
Right.
Clearly inappropriate. One project like this would extinguish all the commercial industrial zoning designation. That clearly couldn't be the intent. So what I said was, given that the town is basically zoned one zone, RF80 comprises upwards of 90% of the town, if you're going to accommodate a project of site, it's ultimately going to be located in the RF80. So what is the regulating control? That is the subject property appropriate? And that's what my belief was the intent of the council is. Bring forward a project, but we're going to determine whether it's appropriate or not. And that was what I believe. Because it talks about in your comprehensive plan, it actually says we should consider allowing these projects in the RFE.
Now, what kind of projects? One acre is one thing. Rooftop solar is another thing.
Yeah, but rooftop solar...
80 acres and 122 acres is another thing.
Understood. Communities also distinguish between what's principal and what's accessory.
Right.
So if a property is introducing renewable energy to serve its own energy needs,
Right.
and that very well could be manufacturing, right? A lot of companies are putting solar panels to serve their own energy needs. That's treated in most communities as an accessory use and deemed it permissible. If it serves your own energy needs, you're not selling it back to the grid. We allow by right. That's what rooftops come into play. This is clearly a principal use. It's a usage of the property. It's like putting a retail center. And that's what they're talking about in the comp plan, is as a principal use, not as an accessory use. So that says to me that the town is thinking to the future, where do we accommodate these things? Clearly, the vast majority of the town is zoned RF80. That's where they're going to be proposed. So there's an anticipation and expectation.
And there's also the anticipation, I'm sure some people here will think this way, that do we even want to accommodate these things?
That's a different argument, and that's for the council to decide.
There's 2 sides to that coin.
Absolutely. And by the way, and that is where the town has the control.
That's right.
Right?
Absolutely.
You don't want to rezone it, it's deemed a prohibited use. Then you got to go to the zoning board for a use variance. But that's where the town has the control.
Can I ask a different question? I'm not too sure anybody can answer the question. How long is the 3-phase line going to have to be from this to the nearest?
I'd ask the principal, Mr. Palumbo, be sworn in. You can give that answer.
You solemnly swear that the testimony you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, and so help you God?
I do.
And your name?
Ralph A. Palumbo.
Thank you.
Thank you, Counselor.
It's an important question to me because we've been told that we can't use our landfill because it's too far away to run a 3-phase line down. It's going to cost $1 million to run a 3-phase line down there. So I would think, considering this site is pretty far away from say, Route 3, 138, all that kind of stuff. So could you tell me, is that true? Is a mile's worth of 3-phase line worth $1 million? Or whatever you're doing?
First I want to say, all the suggestions I've heard here tonight are all things within our grasp and things that I look at as being a good neighbor. All the setbacks, the wildlife, all the things we're we contemplate in every project, the projects evolve based on this debate that we're having here tonight and others, and we're having in discussions we're having with direct neighbors. They're not all totally refined just yet, but we're getting there. But we do have the spirit of being a neighbor and being a good neighbor. So, to answer your direct question, we're in the process of applying with National Grid. We've done what's called a pre-application. You sit and wait, and National Grid says, okay, you can submit for your impact study now. And that takes 90 to 120 days. However, before I go through that, I do a feasibility analysis. I have a very experienced electrical, high voltage electrical engineer that's worked for National Grid and other utilities in his career, and now is a consultant across the country. And we'll have to, as the crow flies, it's probably about 6.5 miles on path. On path, it's probably closer to 9 miles. And does 1 mile of upgrades cost $1 million? If it's just line upgrade and pole upgrade, no. But typically, you carry burden of substation upgrade, you could easily get to $1 million. However, I'll make this concept idea. If we put a 3-phase line in, I don't know where your town landfill is, but the path that we take could shorten the path that you have to take. And it could be done rather easily. If that mile is, if you're only a quarter of a mile off the path we take, you hit, we're going to put, very robust 3-phase power in, it could really dumb down that cost.
Okay, thank you. Very important. One more question. Let's talk about the 1904 building, the old school building that we have to raise. If everything goes right, as far as you're concerned, and we allow this, and you go ahead and agree to pay for the raising of the 1904 building, I absolutely want that controlled by the town. I mean, you can write the paychecks, but you don't tell us who the contract is going to be or how it's going to be done, because there's asbestos in there, and there's all kinds of things in there, and I don't want a slap-happy job done. Somebody come in there with a crane and start ripping things apart. So I think it's a very nice offer, but it's something that I want to have our control over. Yeah. If you understand.
I totally understand that. Like you're protecting the town's reputation and a good citizen. I care about my reputation, just like you care about yours. When I use the highest grade contractors, the site contract and demolition contract that I use is very experienced. It's GR Bernardo Corp. They have an impeccable reputation, and they're a bondable company. That's who I use on all my jobs. If that's acceptable, we'll use them. If you have someone that you want to use that's superior to them, it's fine. You can have control of the contract, and I can pay for it. The one thing I will say that I glean, did I properly answer your question?
Yes.
Yeah. So when I read the articles, the town wants this done after the school year is over this year. I will not be ready at a riskless state at that point in time. I still have tremendous project risk. But I am willing to step forward. I have a sense of what the budget is. And we are willing to step forward because I know your timetable isn't a timetable where I can just meander. You only have the summer period to do it. We'll get it done this summer. I should say, not with no contingencies. If I have my approvals, then I know I can, the rest of it I know I can manage, even with risk. So I just wanted to make that clear.
And I think one of the things too is on that particular building, we have things we would like to save from it to memorialize it.
I see, I know you have a magnificent bell, school bell, and others. And that's just whether I'm in control of the contract or not. It's what we can collaborate on it, and you can dictate that.
Good. Thank
It was an interesting proposal, thank you.
It's great for reading the articles.
Okay, well said, David. Okay, great. I just had a couple of questions here, folks. One for Dave Russo. Dave, you had mentioned 122 acres of the 175 is going to be developed. There's have solar panels on it. Is that correct?
Yeah.
No, well, yes, that is the area of the panels. It also includes the area between the panels, which is grass, but it's into row spacing. So that's a total area of solar field.
Oh, okay.
the edge of the
So it's
panels.
not 170, so I guess what's the difference between the 175 that's mentioned and the 122?
The 175 is the area of clearing.
Oh, okay.
75
Yes, and the 122 is basically
Is
the
the
area of the
panels
panels.
themselves.
Okay. All right, that was all I had for you, sir. Just a couple questions for Nicole. Nicole, I guess if you could, maybe later on in the next hearing perhaps, I think the RFR 80 required minimum for building lot is 2 acres, so I think you did your calculation on 1 acre.
Okay.
You might want to just revise that because I believe it's 2 acres, so that'll be a greater percentage if it was houses.
Yeah.
I'm curious on that. And then you also mentioned, I think, 69 acres, just confirm please, 69 acres of the 175 are already damaged by gypsy moth.
Correct. That's the size of up on the hill
Okay.
that Mr. Tremblay spoke about
Okay.
as part of his assessment.
Okay. Yeah, it's about 39%, something like that.
Right. It's about 40% of the area that will be cleared
Yeah.
that is
Already
already been damaged from the gypsy moth spray.
Okay. All right, thanks, Nicole. I just had one for Mark. You mentioned like there was like a number one, it said 69 acres of upland oak. I guess, can you show me where that is on the map? Where is that damaged area? Is it our maps seem to be inverted from what you folks have?
Yeah.
I'm not sure why.
She's got it on a landscape, and north to south, to tip that map up. So, yeah, if you can put it up like that. So area stand 1 is a Roman numeral 1 on there.
Where's that?
Top right,
Okay.
top right. That's stand 1, that's the upland area
Okay.
with thin Canton, very stony soils. And that's where the least, intact forest is based on the amount of gypsy moth damage. You can look at the 2016 aerial photographs statewide, and you can see where the defoliations occurred, and compare them now to current aerial photographs, and see how much of it is actually dead. It's pretty remarkable. But that whole upland area is stand 1.
Okay. And then where's the mature tree section that you?
Oh, I was referring to that little pocket in the southeast corner, stand 3,
Okay.
Roman numeral 3. Just a 10 or so acres down there that I was referring to that did not get harvested back 20, 30 years ago.
That's really nice.
And is actually kind of on the lower slope side and actually has the healthiest of the hardwood areas involved.
The healthiest place to save water.
Okay. All right, thanks, Mark. That's all I have. All right, Joe. I think the council is done with other questions
I've
tonight.
got one comment.
Yeah, sure.
With what Dave Husband brought up. The landfill is not prohibited. We can put panels there. It's just that there would be less revenue. That's all.
The cost is prohibitive.
No, what I mean is it can be done. And the revenue, instead of being larger, will be smaller.
Yes.
Because of the distance. So.
But hopefully, if this project got approved, we would make that more economically feasible for you, meaning the town, at some future point.
Well, there's another solar project that's near that one. And when it gets out to the main street, it's not a problem. So, but it's not near your project.
Thank you.
Different part of town.
Okay. Thanks, Joe. All right, I want to open it up to public comment. I'll start with the abutters first, then non-abutters. So whoever's an abutter that wishes to speak, you guys have 5 minutes or less, each of you. Mr. Orlandi?
Hi, John O'Leary, live on Dye Hill Road. We're bordered on 3 sides by brush and brook, as you know, so I'll tell you that all.
Can't hear you. Try to speak into the mic, please.
Okay. I have a petition signed by all the abutters, well, not all of them. What I did is I mailed out a letter to all the abutters and then went out and got signatures from them. Of the 21 abutters, I have 15 houses that signed the approval. 16 neighbors that are not abutters also signed the approval. I got 37 total people signing the approval in the general area. I got 4 undecided that said they'd like it to stay woods, 2 no's, and I got 1 house that's a split, it's a yes and a no. So, and yes, they are still talking. So I put everything that I sent to you guys, I got it all together here.
Yeah, give it to the clerk, we'll put it into the record.
Okay. Thank you.
Thanks, Tom. Okay, next the butter.
Project, there was a petition, I never could see that.
You're in a butter, right, Alex?
What's that?
You're in a butter?
Yes, I am.
Okay.
Alexander Poulos, 200 Woody Hill Road.
5 minutes or less, Alex.
Huh?
5 minutes or less.
Somebody must have told you I could talk.
I was forewarned.
Okay, there's 2 issues here. Spot zoning is what I'm against. I have an investment that needs protection from this kind of infestation. For nearly 18 years, my residential investment was protected by zoning laws which were enforced by the towns, with fixed boundaries set, and all participants had equal rights to develop their land under these equal rules, which is zoning. Now it seems that one party is lobbying to get assistance without having to compensate the others. Commercial projects do not belong in neighborhoods. The law was serving the people by protecting their neighborhoods from this kind of plundering, is what I call it, because, anyways, if the town approves this, then it's changing its position. It's abandoning me and leaving me to defend my rights on my own. This puts me in a difficult position. So, what about the impact to the people that live there that don't want to live next to a commercial power station? How does Southern Sky address their loss and their investment? The other thing is, I'm just trying to learn about things like, I always hear on the other ones, the people that want these solar panels talk about their rights. And when I look into early law, it seems that all we have is equal rights. And that's what this law of zoning did. It gave us all equal rights. It's capitalism. We're all equal rights. Government doesn't get involved until, it needs to come up and there's some kind of injustice, and that's the way it is. Now, so how does the government give somebody unequal rights? I've never seen where unequal rights are part of, America. It's all about equal rights for equal people. So the way I look at it is that if they're coming to the government, they're asking for a favor. And when you ask for a favor, you don't demand a favor. They're always saying they have rights. They really gave up their rights. And their rights are really, you're sitting there deciding on what's going to happen. They have no rights. They had them in the way this thing was set up before. They had equal rights. Now they're looking for unequal rights, which to me is basically un-American. And it's more of a socialist thing. So, this is the way I feel about this. And so, like I said, if you guys abandon me, then you're putting me in a tough position. Thank you.
Thanks, Alex. Next, the butter.
Good evening. My name's Conrad Cardano. I moved here about 3 years ago. My wife is here. We live at 110 Dye Hill Road. We are right next to this. And I've been in contact with the company. There's going to be about a 500-foot buffer between our property and a solar panel array. And I don't have any problem with it. We've had solar panels on our house for about a year and a half. Our electricity bill went from $1,200 down to $50. I think this is a great idea. Okay, I think it's great because it's all about the future. We are going to need more electricity in the future to power everything. And if you look at the news lately, there's been a lot of controversy about a power station in Burrville. They don't want all this carbon being released. We have an environmentally friendly project going up. I much prefer this than seeing 140 houses. It's going to destroy everything, having all of those houses there, the whole nature of everything there. Solar panel's going to be quiet. I'm not worried about the 40 decibels, that's nothing. The buffer is long enough, we'll never know that those solar panels are there. I think it's a great idea and I support it, and I hope you will.
Thank you, sir. Next.
Same address.
Yeah,
Nancy
yeah.
Harrison. I'm not sure. I'm a supporter, of course. 200 Woody Hill Road. I just really wanted to express my objection to this proposal. With all due respect, a lot of work being done. But this is an investment in my future as well. This is my property. And I am very concerned that the property value will go down as a result of this. I enjoy the woods that we have. We do a lot of walking in them. And I'm just really disappointed in a process that could allow for zoning changes to happen, what seems to be very random. And that's all I have to say.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next, the butter. Any more butters? Okay, any non-abutters wishing to speak? Sir,
I have a speech, just a couple of questions.
Yeah, come on up. So, like, state your name and address and address the questions to me, and I'll get them answered for you.
All right, Joe Capalvo, Woody Hill Road. What's the time frame for this project, beginning to end?
Yeah, I think Councilor
asked.
Thompson asked that. I don't know if
It's
we
an
have,
unknown.
do we have a timetable yet established, Joe?
We would hope sometime in 19, but we have a lot of other approvals to get. Obviously, the town planning board and DEM, and then National Grid. I mean, this could be 2 to 3 years before it ever started. And it's a long process. This is obviously a public process. The rest of it is as well. The planning board and National Grid for comment. So it's probably 24 to 36 months would be an accurate estimate. And that's just an estimate. Yes, to completion, to the end.
Does that answer your question, sir?
Well, that first one, and how long do you intend for it to be there? Is this a 25-year, 30-year, 50-year?
I'll let Ralph.
Project equipment warranties.
I'm sorry.
The project,
Just address everything to me.
the project equipment warranties, the primary equipment warranties are 25 years. But we have very robust replacement and reserve and operating maintenance plans, and I expect those projects, that equipment to last 30, 35 years with some replacement with it. But with these projects and interconnection services, once you have one, they're good until you stop operating. I don't know what the future will bring. I expect the future will bring more efficient operations, more economical operations. And my thought, I'm a renewable energy developer and will stay renewable energy. If the current equipment wears out, we'll replace it with the next best equipment that's available. And hopefully it's more efficient, it's less spacing and so on.
So you have no plans for the property beyond just the solar? In other words, you don't plan to keep it like 30 years and then all of a sudden this goes away and you go into a housing development or anything like that?
My business is renewable energy. My children are in my business. They're much younger than me. When this project expires, I'll be very old, and they'll be still prime. And then that's the business they've chosen to be in. It's not housing. It's not commercial smokestacks or anything like that. They've chosen to be in renewable energy, and I expect them to continue that.
If the property is approved and we change the zoning from RFR 80 to commercial special for strictly solar, it does revert back to RFR 80 at the end of the commissioning process. So,
One last question. Sure. The fence going, is it going on the perimeter or just what's being developed?
The 6-foot fence is going around the perimeter of the solar panels, not the perimeter of the property.
Thank you.
thank you. Harvey.
Harvey Griffin, Conservation Commission. Question, Lawrence Berkeley National Laboratory puts out a publication each year. It's quite informative. And I've got some questions related to that. Their publication is Utility Scale Solar, Empirical Trends in Project Technology, Cost, Performance, and Power Purchase Agreement Pricing in the U.S. And the most recent version is 2018. They identify the average cost of developing one of these systems as $2 per watt. So a 58 megawatt system would be $116 million for the basic development on the property. This doesn't include the cost of the property or interconnections and so forth. So this project, as I said, $116 million roughly in cost, and based on the numbers that we were given, it appears that it would generate more than $300 million in income over the life of the project. One of the other things that was in that publication was that close to 3/4 of the solar panels installed the last couple of years in the United States are tracking systems. They face south and they track the sun as it moves across the sky, east to west. Tracking systems can increase the efficiency of a solar panel approximately 30%. And I bring that up as a question, why don't we, if the goal is to have 58 megawatts of electricity, why not use a tracking system? And you can reduce the amount of area that's disturbed by 30%. So that would be a way to help create much larger buffers, and it would have less impact on everything around it. And so I would suggest that the town council push for tracking systems. They're being used in the north. They're being used a lot right in Minnesota, I was reading about. They certainly have a tough climate. And I would say that the town council should look for alternative ways like that that would allow the applicant to make their money, at the same time have a much less impact on the town. Thank you.
All right, thanks, Art. Yeah, something the developer will have to examine, I guess, Mr. Blumberg. You want to comment on that? Yeah, because I have no idea what was talking about the traffic.
I'll respond to the tracker question. I've studied that very closely. There's very few systems in the northeast. The systems that have trackers are close to the equator, because that's where they work very well. Here in the northeast, the biggest problem we have is weather conditions. Trackers do not behave well in northeastern storms when they're trying to move with snow on them. They don't go on and off when you want them to. And the repairs and maintenance, the studies show in a climate like this, trackers actually reduce output because of the wear and tear and repairs and maintenance and downtime that you have with that. So it's not here. There are systems, as Mr. Buford said, there are systems here in the Northeast, but they're all pilot systems. I know National Grid has a few of them in Massachusetts. I'm building one right now for them, and I'm building a second one. But it's not a merchant model. It's a ratepayer model. They're doing these sub-studies to see how they track. They're going to go 10 years out, and then they're going to come back to the DPU in Massachusetts, and they'll say, this is how they performed. They worked, they didn't work. So we're in the studying model right here in Northeast. But what the information we have right now, it doesn't work.
Okay, thanks for that. Appreciate it. Mr. Morrell. Five minutes or less. I know it's going to be difficult.
Good evening. My name is Joe Moreau. I live on Old Depot Road. I was at the planning board hearing on August 1st for this project. I also reviewed minutes of that meeting a couple of times. Mr. Hopkinton from the planning board said he was not in favor of spot zoning. He also talked about the size of the project, 58 megawatts, 122 acres of panels on a 162-acre parcel. Mr. Hopkinton also asked Mr. Pimentel if he was aware of any project of this size in Rhode Island. Mr. Pimentel said he was not aware of any others of that size and scale in Rhode Island. Mr. Diorio of the Planning Board talked about the amount of countless hours into negotiating best possible project for the town to get for the property, and changing it now would wipe away the hard work. He was referring to the affordable housing project. Mr. Russo also said, as a project manager, as you know, in an analysis that it would remain like a grass area. Mr. Hopkinton said, I'm not confident in that analysis of that because that land is very ragged. There was an article in the Westerly Sun on September 25th. It was entitled Solar versus Housing in Hopkinton, No Contest. I never realized until that article how bad homes are, children, and families are. I would bet that everyone in this room tonight was raised in a home, went to school. When I was much younger, that was the dream. Own your own home, raise children, attend schools, and become the best you could be. What happened to those values? Mr. Pennypacker at the August 1st hearing also added that the Conservation Committee opposes large-scale industrial solar projects. As you know, the Planning Board voted 4-0 not to support this project. They cited land use goals 1, 4, 5, and housing goal 1. Thanks again to the Planning Board for their hard work. What most developers will do on projects, in my opinion, is use some type of a scare tactic or hit you with, if you don't approve, something worse will happen. It's almost like a threat of something worse. For an example, exit 1 is if it was not approved, the distribution center would go in. Palmer Circle, if it was not approved, a low income would go in. Brushy Brook, it's homes. I didn't time this, but I wondered how long it would take tonight before there was something to give back to the town. I would expect, and I'm sure the town council, they do a very good job, to look at the project based on the merits. Tonight, the give back, or what I refer to as throwing us a bone, is that, and it is a kind gesture, and I give the developer credit. Tonight it was demo in a school for the town. Except for the landowner, the developer, paid witnesses, no one has been in favor of changing these residential property zones until tonight. The first planning board meeting, October 9th, 2009, concerning this project, that was 9 years ago. Homes have not built in 9 years. If you ever walk the property, you will see that it will be a severe challenge to install roads or to build any significant number of homes on this parcel because it is strewn with massive boulders. The abutter that presented the article in 925 said that there would be 2 children per home and used those numbers in his calculation. When the average family size in Hopkinton is 3, so that's 2 adults and 1 child. So if you look at the towncharts.com Rhode Island demographics, that's where I got that information from. The same abutter has offered some calculations based on a classroom size of 14.3 students per classroom. But the school contract states, and I got this from Article 10, class size, page 9, that no class, individual class shall exceed, and I'm just going to give you the average from K through 12. It comes out to 25.3 students. I hate to be that 0.3 student, but it's 25.3 students. The high is 30 for an honors program, the low is 20 for a basic extended. So if you look at the 14.3 teachers, that article said that 20 teachers would have to be hired. That's not true. The economic impact would be far less than he argues. I urge the town council to understand that these figures are not remotely realistic. I don't know what the residents who signed that petition were told. For an example, in that Sun article on 925, it said that the taxes for each house in Hopkinton would be raised by $800 or more. Don't know if that number's right.
Almost 518, 522.
Was it real? Yeah. Fast clock. Let me skip. Okay, let me go right to the end. Thank you. I get it. I mean, they have very nice homes in that area. There was a plan that was approved for an additional homes that has been approved precisely because the use is consistent with the prescribed residential zoning. I'm not going to read some of the other things. I want to read my last statement. I just ask that everyone look and review the facts to make sure they're correct. But one thing I'd like to leave you with is I want you to think about this and really think about this hard and long. This is what is proposed in this particular project. A large-scale, industrial-sized manufacturing business in a residential neighborhood bordering the Arcadia Wildlife Management Area. This project does not keep Hopkinton country. Thank you.
Thanks, Joe.
How much time is it?
6:21.
I owe you a minute 21.
You owe me coffee at Golden Farms. Next, non-abutter.
Hi, my name is Alyssa Neal. I just moved in this past summer. I will say I kind of thought your presentation was a little weak. You were the only one that actually mentioned anything about risks. You got, yeah?
You just addressed.
Well, I mean, they were the ones that got more than 5 minutes to speak, and we had to sit here patiently and listen. And what they did not do is present any of the risks that were associated with this project. And absolutely no project can ever occur without any risks or threats. They came up here and they presented all the positives. Putting a 6-foot fence around solar panels and then talking about vegetation that you're going to put under a solar panel to help with the wildlife is laughable. Because how much wildlife is actually going to be able to scale a 6-foot fence and get in there other than birds and other small animals? I mean, I have a bobcat, or several bobcats, come through my yard every single day, and now you're taking away 175 acres of their natural habitat. And just to put this into perspective, you're talking about 16% of the acreage in Hope Valley is now going to be designated for this, and what's going to be built on is 8% of the acreage in Hope Valley is going to have a solar panel on it from just this project. I hope you guys do some math. That's laughable. I also am kind of concerned that are we just looking at foliage that's been devastated by gypsy moths, and then we need to come up with a project to take this down and treat it with a solar panel? I mean, that came up several times. Gypsy moths are a natural occurrence. They do devastate forests and foliage. Mother Nature has a way of coming back from all of that. I don't think it has to do with them coming in to build up a solar panel and then putting in more forestation. That's kind of not a really good way to handle that one. I also want to know what kickbacks are the abutters going to be getting that do support this. If you guys have mentioned that there's other solar panel projects going on in Hopkinton and Hope Valley, I'd like to see what the kickbacks are for all of the Hope Valley residents or Hopkinton residents. I don't think that their solar panel project is actually going to benefit the major residents here, according to their electric bill. My electric bill isn't going to be going down. I know that there's other little solar farms around in my house, and I've seen $0 come off. And I came from Massachusetts, and the electric bill in Rhode Island is unbelievable. I'm paying about $200 a month for my house, and in Massachusetts I was paying $30. I don't really understand what the kickbacks are going to be for us. Seems like you guys have some of your own going on. And then one of the other things is that, you know, you guys talk about knocking down the school as a benefit. If the deal is so sweet to get this solar panel project, I don't think that they would have to sweeten the deal with making that kind of a gesture. It is nice, but you should kind of look into the behavior of why that is actually needed. What's the rationale for that? I mean, is it to sweeten a deal to kind of sugarcoat the fact that they're going to be devastating 16% of the land? I don't really think saying that something is 900 feet away from an endangered or protected species is really significant. 900 feet, I don't really understand why you would ever put a numerical value on something that's man-made to the distance of an endangered species. I mean, you're still encroaching on their habitat, you're encroaching on their food, where they live. I don't really think that was a perk. You know, there are other types of pollution. There's noise pollution, and at 40 decibels, is that cumulative? So you have 143 machines making noise at 40 decibels. So I'm not sure, I haven't done the math, if that's cumulative or not, but I don't really think that that's necessarily a great thing for all the wildlife that lives there now. And just to also put it into perspective, the amount of trees that they're taking down produces enough oxygen for half of the population in Hopkinton a year. I mean, 34,000 trees is significant. And again, you brought up the fact that it's 40% are already devastated by gypsy moths, and this is your solution, is to put up a man-made solar panel. I also think the technology has a lifespan. So what happens when this, expires, and it's not really what the new wave of how to generate electricity is? Now we're stuck with 175 acres of solar panels or outdated equipment. And in 10 years from now, can the size of this be cut in half? And then are they going to be able to come in here and maybe reduce the acreage down to 80 rather than 175 if the technology continues to change? I mean, I hope that you guys look at this and to see what the future plans are going to be and to see what they're going to do as the technology evolves or gets outdated, so you're not stuck with all of this unuseful solar energy. So, thanks.
Thank you. Next.
Maybe they should respond.
Wayne Suits, 43 Cedar Lane.
I'm sorry, Wayne.
Wayne Suits, 43 Cedar Lane. I just want to say that I wholeheartedly support the decision of the planning board to disallow this project, to reject this project, as not being in compliance with a comprehensive plan. The land use goal 1 of the comprehensive plan is to preserve existing working farms, wildlife, and wildlife habitat. And just as, to bring back a point of information, how many trees? 35,000. I can't see how you can rationalize that with the comprehensive plan.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you. Joe, did you want to address some of the, or do you want to wait till the end?
I'll let the owner, but Mr. Colombo.
I'd like to address some points. As a company or individuals, I've never paid a kickback. The connotation was I was doing something illegal. Council, I don't operate like that. I come into a community. I do my best to be the best neighbor that I can be. I pay taxes. I may make contributions to be helpful and be a good neighbor, like the school proposal I made. I made a proposal to the land trust, and I couldn't get together with them, and so I shifted it to the school proposal. It's as simple as that. I think, we're going to do everything we possibly can to be a good neighbor and put the property to a good, productive, clean use. Wildlife habitat, or I should say nature, I've learned with these projects I've been developing for a decade now, nature always finds a way. I mean, I have projects where I have a coyote family that has been living in the project since 2012. My mother she has her pups and she lives there and she burrows and, birds, rabbits, she hunts them. So nature does find a way. It's not like we're going to create a jail cell and only the panel's going to be there and nothing else. It will have a robust community. Birds, for whatever reason, love solar panels. They come in, they make homes, and we find a little bit dangerous, but bee habitats really attract underneath of the panels, and so it does create a robust nature habitat.
Okay, thanks, Mr. Colombo. Next.
Hi, I'm Deborah O'Leary, 44 Pleasant View Drive, Hutton Hope Valley. I'm also on the Conservation Commission. All I'm going to say is something very brief. This has been rejected by the planning board. It is 358 acres in the middle of a residential zone, which also borders Arcadia Management Area. To turn this into a commercial property to generate even green energy is wrong. This is our town. We've sweated through a comprehensive plan putting things together, trying to come up with things that work for everyone. The only thing this is going to work for is the property owner. That's what's going to work for. They're going to make income. Maybe we'll get some taxes from it, but the properties in that area are going to suffer as far as their assessments go. Wait and see. And you hear, no more spot zoning.
Muriel Conklin of 165 Garden Road, and I just have a question, clarification from Sylvia. She made the comment about the route that they would take coming out of the project, right or left. Is that like a restriction, a recommendation, a contingency of it?
I would think that rather, I'm very concerned about that. We don't want it going over bridges, and they need to know what's safe and what's best.
Right.
And not to travel all the roads just to get to Route 3 or something, but to use the safest route. And the only way we really know is to dump it on Public Works, because they're aware of the bridges
Right.
and the road widths, and get a recommendation from them. What would they recommend? And then I would think we'd also document a condition of the road, especially where their trucks are coming out. So we want to document how things are, so that if in the future there are any damage to a bridge or the roadway, it would be on them to fix. So those are the sort of things that if you are in favor of the project, you have stipulations in your motion that will make them adhere to certain things. So, yes.
Okay, because every route that they would take, basically, on these beautiful back roads,
They have a problem.
they have a bridge or a corner or something. You go out to the right and you go to 138, it's a terrible left hand, probably with big trucks or
Yeah,
equipment.
that's true. Yep.
And you're going by many families' homes with children, grandchildren, it's just really got populated. We already have Connecticut people zooming from one end to the 138 to Route 3, all the way to the back road. Going left, at least, it's a few houses on Dye Hill where the project, if it got approved, they've got long driveways, and on Sawmill, it's a campground.
Less invasive.
Yes, campground and 2 residential homes. And it's an easier east and west coming out, just something to, because I didn't know if it was a restriction, I just wanted it to be noted, my concern.
Okay, great, thanks, man, appreciate it. Mr. Bibler. 5 minutes or less, Mike.
So I just want to say, Eric Bidler, 119 Woodville Road. I'm one of the founders of a group called Hopkinton Citizens for Responsible Planning. We now have about 45 to 50 members. I'm going to try to keep this to 5 minutes, but I have 2 things I'd like to ask the town council to clarify for all of us about your approach. I just want to put a couple of questions to you. And then I think Harvey Buford estimated that the cost of this project is, in the vicinity of $116 million, which is about $116 million more than what we have at our disposal, so we don't have an attorney here or anything. I'd like to address some of the points that have been made. So my first question is, we have heard the term spot zoning a lot, in this hearing and in others. I just want to read a 1-line or 2-line definition of spot zoning and then ask a question. So spot zoning in this legal dictionary is defined as a provision in a general plan which benefits a single parcel of land by creating a zone for use just for that parcel and different from the surrounding properties in the area. Gives an example of a corner service station in a residential zone. Spot zoning is invalid because it amounts to an arbitrary, capricious, and unreasonable treatment of a limited area within a particular district and is therefore a deviation from the comprehensive plan. Why isn't this spot zoning? We keep hearing the council insist that it's not spot zoning. This seems to be the very definition of spot zoning, so why isn't it?
Joe?
Very simply.
What I'd like to hear, the town council is the body that has repeatedly asserted that this isn't spot zoning, so I would like to know the town council.
They haven't said a word.
Eric, I never said it wasn't
Well,
spot zoning.
Frank
It was
has
spot
said in the August 6th hearing or the July 23rd
This is the
hearing.
first time we've been here.
Oh, no, yeah, Joe,
I'm
that's
saying that
that's
town
fine.
council has insisted that this approach is
Kevin,
not.
you
I
wanna-
did not.
You wanna?
I didn't go anything about it.
Okay, so you're not necessarily in agreement that it's not spot zoning. Anyone? Frank, what do you want
Well, you know
us?
what the state is doing? They're coming up, they're trying to decide whether or not solar panels are land use or is it farm use? How do you classify it? It's like, does it, where does it belong?
Right,
So,
but-
so the questions are coming up, and I don't know. People look at it differently.
But as the state will tell you, the town has its own ordinances, and the town operates under its own set of ordinances, and we have a future land use map, and we have zoning districts, and this is a residential district, and this is a single parcel in a residential district. So things may be evolving, different towns are adopting different regimes, but under our regime, this seems to fit the definition of spot zone.
Well, we'll get an answer for you, I guess, and I'll email you personally, Eric.
Okay, I would like to know
So
why.
did you have another question?
Yeah. So then the other thing I really wanted clarification on, I was going back through prior town council minutes because this has been an evolving question. I wanted to get an education on, where we've been and where we're going. As you know, you had a workshop in January of 2017 to discuss zoning issues. The stated purpose of the workshop was to discuss options, including but not limited to possible application of planned unit development ordinance or other potential vehicles the town might consider in facilitating developers and property owners wanting to consider installing commercial solar arrays on appropriate parcels of land zoned RFR 80. So this entire workshop about how to devise a way to allow commercial solar arrays on residential. And I won't read you the highlights. I'm going to give this to you, for incorporation by reference. And then out of the, and then one of, Sylvia Thompson referred to the EUD memo and outlined a series of steps that the town should take, and if I can find it, step 3 was determine the best way for the town to allow commercial solar farms in RFR 80 zones, and after decommissioning, how to retain the RFR 80 designation to revert back to residential. So we have the solar development overview prepared periodically by the town planner, and there are 4 projects that have been rezoned to date, and every single one of them carries these 2 stipulations. One is that the RFR 80 land will be rezoned to commercial special with a stipulation that it be commercial special but only for solar, right? So you can't put up
Manufacturing.
Right, exactly. And then the other stipulation is that it will automatically revert to RFR 80 if it's abandoned or at the end of its useful life. And from comments that I've heard in a dozen meetings now, planning board here, state came in, the discussion on the solar ordinance, the other hearings for the other projects. And tonight, I think you said it, Mr. President, you said that this project will automatically revert to RFR 80 when it's done. So I just wanted to verify that this is really the framework that we should expect. This is the method that the town is applying on these RFR 80 parcels, is to stipulate as a prerequisite that they automatically revert. Am I correct in?
It does.
Okay. So if you want.
And I want to let you know how that came about. We heard on the rumor mill that there was a large proposal that would be coming in, and we had no ordinance to deal with solar. And we knew and we heard it was from a particular attorney, and when we heard that, we knew this attorney would be coming in with a plan, and that was the Route 91 proposal that went in.
Right,
So that's why this council jumped on doing an ordinance so that we could regulate it before somebody submitted it. So that's how it came up.
So every other project, this has been a prerequisite, and from the comments that I've heard on pending projects, it has been treated as if it's a prerequisite, right? And I've actually had some conversations with individual councilors who have said to me, I would never have voted for any of these projects if they didn't revert. Is that a fair assessment of where the mind of the council is? So it is a
I
prerequisite.
wouldn't want to stay.
Okay.
You're over 2 minutes, Eric, so wrap it up, please.
I know, I'm trying to cover a lot of ground for a lot of people. If anybody wants to yield time to me from our group, maybe that's a solution. I don't know.
I yield my time.
You respond. And then some.
Okay, so, I mean, those were questions about procedure, okay? I wanted to get clear, I thought it was important. So, to some of the comments tonight, you know, I know that many of the butters here prefer a commercial use for this property, which is the solar panels, right? They prefer that this be rezoned, and they see that as less threatening than the housing development. As a matter of fact, John, I've been by your house, and it's immaculate, it's perfect, and I can see why you don't want traffic going by there and everything else. But I think that we have to bear in mind that, you know, we do have a comprehensive plan, and the plan is based on the zoning map, and this entire area is zoned as residential, and not only that, there's actually been a residential project approved on a residential parcel, you know, in this location. And it seems like one of the things I've heard a lot tonight is this sort of false equivalency from some of the experts, certainly, and others, that, well, it was already approved as a big residential project, so it's a small step to go from residential to commercial, and the commercial is less impactful, so actually it's the same thing, only it's a major improvement. That logic is completely false. I also...
You're really going to wrap it up. It's 8:39. So wrap up. You have the last questions or comments so we can get to the rest of the folks.
All right. I guess I'll quit. Will there be a chance to say more at the next hearing?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
All right. I'll make my points then.
Thank you very much, Eric. I'll get back to you directly on the spot zone.
What's that?
Yeah, I'll email you directly. Sir. Yes, sir.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Ken Lang. I'm actually a neighbor to the project. I live on Stone Bridge Way, which is just up Dye Hill Road, less than a quarter mile from the proposed solar array. I have a Bachelor of Science degree in Natural Resource Sciences from the University of Rhode Island. I'd just like to say that given the proposed uses of this particular piece of property, I would much rather see an environmentally friendly project such as a solar array as opposed to a large-scale housing development, which would obviously impact groundwater supplies and add increased traffic to the roads on Dye Hill and add increased pressure on public services. So having said that, I support this project fully, and I would love to see a zoning change go through to allow this project to proceed.
Thank you, sir. Next.
Good evening. Hi, my name is Laura Lopata, 45 Highview Avenue, and I just wanted to say to all of you that I moved here in 1991 specifically because Hopkinton had this wonderful rural character. I could have bought a house anywhere in Rhode Island, but I bought it here. And now when I hear that the Town Planning Commission has said no, that the Land Trust, which has partnered with these folks on another project, has not been able to come to agreement on this, I get worried. I too bought another piece of property that for all these years, I knew when I bought the property it could be developed. I bought the property with that in mind, knowing that that could happen, and did my landscaping accordingly, as did these nice people. I am a little concerned, though, that I feel that a bait and switch has gone on. I bought my property under one set of rules, knowing full well that that property could be developed for houses and everything that that brings in. And now, if another company came and wanted to put a solar farm there, that you could do that and I would still have my property. So I just ask you to please remember that it's going to be very difficult for me to perhaps one day sell my property, saying, oh yes, there could be houses there, but anytime they choose, I could have a solar farm. And I think that that is going to lower my potential sale on my property, but also to ask you to please remember the wonderful rural character of Hopkinton that for all these decades we've worked so very hard to keep. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? John, 5 minutes or less.
5 minutes? Give you my time.
Hi, good evening. Thank you. I just...
Sorry.
Oh, sure. John Pennypacker, Lawton Foster Road North. I just want to talk about the comprehensive plan. I've spent a lot of time with it. I'm sure you all have as well. There are many chapters to it, and I'm not going to list every one, but I do want to list the three primary goals under economic development. The first one is to expand the tax base by encouraging development of new and existing light and or heavy industrial and office commercial businesses. I think the operative part is businesses. The second one is to expand and maintain local tourism, including ecotourism. The third is to grow local agricultural operations. And the reason I bring up these three goals is that not one of them supports bringing in solar development. In fact, the word solar appears 4 times in our comprehensive plan, and all 4 are in response to advancements that we've made since 2016 in allowing solar to exist on manufacturing and industrial property. So one thing I hope the council considers when you think about this project and other projects that are like it going forward, the planning board has a mechanism for hiring experts to bring in an independent perspective and to challenge the expert opinions that are brought before us, because we don't have any other way to vet sort of the opinions that are presented. And so I hope that you'll seek ways to validate the statements that are made by experts and to ensure that we're acting on actual sound expert advice. Thank you.
Thanks, John. Anyone else?
Hi, my name is Tammy Walsh. I live at 229 Woodville Road. I sat through the August 1st planning board meeting. I've actually sat through a lot more of the town council and planning board meetings than I've ever sat through in my entire life, and I've lived in Hopkinton for 35 years. At that meeting, the planning board unanimously rejected the proposal as being inconsistent with our comprehensive plan and the future land use. So I want to make a point of that. I think that's very important for the council to be mindful of that when they consider this. I also think that this proposal, if approved, would definitely constitute spot zoning. Based on the definition that Eric Bidler gave, it's a piece of residential property. It's surrounded by residential all around, and in the middle of it, there will be a change to commercial if you approve this. And so, in my opinion, and based on the definition, I think that sounds like spot zoning to me. And then, lastly, I just wanted to agree with Joe that any decision that the council makes should be based on the merits of the plan and whether it complies with our town ordinances, our comprehensive plan, and all the other things that are in place, and not based on an inducement given to us by the developer. I think it's very nice that they're willing to offer something, but I do not think that we should be making decisions like this based on what other people are going to give us. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Okay. Having heard none, motion to continue or close?
Motion to continue.
Okay.
Second.
Okay, motion made and seconded. Any further discussion?
We just need to figure out a date.
Yeah.
And I would think that date would be very dependent upon when we're going to receive some of the documents, especially the stormwater management report, soil, especially the soil erosion and sediment control plan. I mean, that's crucial.
You think we can do it in the next
So when do you think?
We think we can be ready by the 15th of October.
Really?
With the reports that Sylvia's asking for?
I would defer to David Russo, who's going to be doing them, and if he says yes, I'll bet on that.
Well, that also means that we can't receive them that night. We have to go through them and read them, so it would actually take a little longer than that. If he had them ready in a week, then we'd have that whole week to read these documents. So that might be a little dicey.
It is dicey, but not only that, we have a new council coming in November 4th. I think that's inappropriate. If you can finish by the 15th or the 23rd, or whatever you're going to do, and we have 2 weeks to advertise it, and it is in November, that makes sense.
Would it be acceptable to provide the
It's
document?
inappropriate, I think, to our citizens and to the new council.
Barbara, let's see, here with Joe. Joe, would it be possible to submit that 5 days before the 15th? Would
Sure.
that give you enough days? If we could supply it by October 10th, and we could come here on the 15th, and then we could come back again 2 weeks if you needed to be the last Monday in October, or even the first Monday in November before the election.
Put it in the packet. Yeah, if you can get it by the 10th, it would go in our mail that week. We get it that weekend.
Yes, Mr. Russo says he can produce those documents by the 10th of October.
I disagree with that. I think that is truly not fair to the council that will have to make the decision on this piece of property.
It's just a second hearing.
It may be a second hearing, but it could be closed at the second hearing, and in that case, the new council doesn't have a chance to do a full hearing. And I think whoever, the next 2 people on council, or whoever runs for council, need to be able to be there. I think that's just appropriate.
You're assuming we're going to close the project.
I am. No, I'm not. I'm assuming you could close it. If you're
Well,
going
if
to
we do, then
guarantee
it gets
not
finished
closing.
here, yes or no, but we can't stop. We should move forward, and we might, who knows what's going to happen? We don't know.
They have the material ready for us to review. We should continue
I
it
think
until the 15th.
both you and Sylvia think we should. I think we should continue it until November.
For what reason?
I just went through it. We have a new council coming in, and they should have the right to sit in a full hearing
There'll
on the
still be
project.
2 more meetings with this council.
Yes, there will.
So, and you're assuming it's going to be closed. So-
I'm assuming it could be closed. Not that it will be, but it could be, because that's perfectly acceptable to close it.
If you can get it by the 10th, I would say we put it on the agenda for the 15th. So.
Well, you have a motion and a second, and something to be considered on October 15th. You have an advertised hearing that evening at the Hopkinton Town Hall for the...
Atlantic one?
No, for the solar ordinance.
PSCS?
Oh, for the solar ordinance?
Yeah, so that's a given. You have to have it at the Town Hall. And
That's
you
for
have
the amendments?
Yes. So if that's the direction you're going in, then the 15th would be at the Hopkinton Town Hall, not at a school.
Okay, so we'll just do it that, yeah.
Well, you have a motion and a second to continue, but you don't have agreement.
Who motioned and
Well,
who seconded?
you
Councilor
made the
Capalbo
motion.
and seconded
I
by
made the
Councilor
motion
Thompson.
to continue the hearing.
Right. The
Right.
motion was to continue the hearing, and then we talked about it, so the motion is to continue the hearing, period. Okay.
All right, so are we going to set a date or not?
Yeah, we're
15th?
looking at the 15th.
Okay.
So we're going to have it at the town hall with all these people,
Yeah.
with the PSCS.
Right.
And what happens if it has to be canceled? Because there will be too many people.
Well, then that's life, we cancel. I mean,
And you'll get your way.
if things don't work out, they don't work out.
I
You gotta
think
move
you're
forward
correct. I
with a
think
plan, you know?
you're being rude to your citizens. They have the right to hear, and so does your council.
They have the right to hear, and we listen, and anyone wanting to speak,
Make a
spoke.
decision not to continue to someone else.
We're continuing to the 15th. Get the information to us by the 10th for the clerk's office, please.
So,
And then,
just to confirm, you have a motion and a second to continue it to the 15th. So you have to vote
No,
on that.
only a
No,
motion
the
to
motion was to
continue.
continue the hearing. There was, and we talked, we discussed the date, but it wasn't part of the motion.
Okay.
Yeah, so anyway,
So did you vote on the
We didn't
motion
vote
to
on it yet.
continue?
motion to vote,
motion?
I mean, to continue the hearing.
So are you going to finish your vote on the
Yes.
motion to continue?
Motion
So
to
in
continue is
favor
made,
and opposed?
seconded, all those in favor? Aye.
Is that unanimous?
Yes.
Is it unanimous? Okay.
Yes.
Okay. So the other part of it would be whether you continue to October 15th. Is that that?
Yeah, they said they could get the information to us.
I'm against it, and I want to make it perfectly clear.
All right, I'm not against it. If they can get the information, it's just a continuation.
And then the residents can look at these documents too. Anyone here, they said that they'd give it to us by the 10th, correct? So if, on October 10th, Lisa, the town clerk, is going to be receiving documents. Now, maybe it's the end of the day, but, so come in on the 11th. Anyone who wants to see a copy of these documents.
Can't this all be done electronically?
Sure.
Okay, so like you have PDFs, I'm assuming you
Yes.
guys have PDFs. The maps would be great if those were PDFs. The reports that you guys talked about would be great in PDFs. I'd like to do this electronically.
We can do that.
Okay.
Who's going to do that?
Well,
I can't always say that I'm going to do that.
Right.
It can be done, yes, but how am I going to distribute?
if they're, you know, when we heard a proposal before, we had a stack of papers like this, and that's okay.
Joe, please submit PDFs to the clerk on all this stuff, so we can distribute it as necessary.
We would be happy to electronically submit everything,
Okay.
and then you can disseminate it
Right.
to the world.
Great,
Are you
good,
going
that's
to
good.
expect hard copies as well? Because I can't always
Yes.
print out those hard copies.
We'll do it electronically, and we will overnight or hand deliver hard copies to you.
Beautiful, great, that's good. How
try
many
to
copies
accomplish.
should they have?
Well, you wanted a
Yeah,
certain
hard
size,
copies.
so an 8.
8, okay. So we
May I
need
ask
at
one
least
other question?
8.
I don't know about the town hall, like I said, I just moved in. But is there any way that you could project these on a screen and like, so that you don't use a mouse? There's no projector?
We're trying to get air conditioning. One step at a time.
Very rural, lovely.
Well, it might stay rural, it might not, but yeah, hopefully it does stay rural.
Now,
Have them all electronically.
anyone,
You can share.
What's that, Joe?
We'll submit it in PDFs or even a Dropbox, and you can share them with anybody.
So it'll just be a URL, you can email to people, a URL, so you don't have to, you can post it on your website.
You can even post it on your website. We'll make it as easy as possible for you to give it to the widest possible audience.
Okay.
and if anyone here would like to leave their email address with the clerk, that might be helpful too, so she can send anything to you. Is that okay?
Giving her more work, so we should.
I don't think there's going to be that many, but.
Okay, all right. So we're all set, I guess.
Paper's okay to me.
What's that?
Paper's okay to me.
I like paper too.
All right, motion's been made
To adjourn?
to adjourn. We're going to make a motion
Second.
to adjourn.